The United Kingdom has an epic history and a wealth of secrets still to uncover. Every year, hundreds of archaeologists dig, dive, and sieve to find clues, to add to the great historical jigsaw of our ancestors' lives.
You know when people say, what's the best thing you've ever found, guys? This.
I'm Professor Alice Roberts. This year we've uncovered some astonishing finds and made some truly groundbreaking discoveries.
Wow, look at that.
Each team of archaeologists has been armed with a dig diary camera so they can record their discoveries as they happen.
That is brilliant. Dave, I love you.
Our roving archaeologist, Dr. Nisha McSweeney, is out on the digs.
Who are we looking at?
It's royal.
And I'll be inviting the teams to bring in their finds for closer analysis.
That is absolutely beautiful.
In this special edition of Digging for Britain, we're exploring the archaeology of World War II. We're joining digs from across the country to give us an insight into the lives of those who lived and fought during the war, from the physical evidence they left behind. We'll witness the raising of a World War II bomber from the depths of the English Channel, the unearthing of one of Hitler's feared V2 rockets, and an excavation of a hostel where young Holocaust survivors were brought after the war. Welcome to Digging for Britain. I've come to the Imperial War Museum in Duxford, Cambridgeshire. It was from this airfield that the first Spitfires took off for the Battle of Britain in July 1940. Countless Allied missions flew from airfields right across Britain, heading for Nazi-occupied Europe. But some planes never made it that far. And we head now to the Solent, where a chance discovery has prompted a large-scale diving operation. They are attempting to recover the amazingly intact remains of a Second World War bomber. The excavation is located 500 metres offshore, not far from Gosport Harbour. It was here in 2018 that the National Grid planned to lay an electricity cable to France, and they first needed to conduct an underwater survey of the seafloor.
Yeah. Right, that looks like something.
It's really hard to tell. It's been down there a long time, whatever it is.
Looks like a section of an engine, that it looks like. Got cables there, have you? That looked like the framework of a wing or something.
They'd stumbled upon a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. A World War II bomber known as a Ferry Barracuda that appeared to be completely intact. The Barracuda was designed by British company Ferry Aviation. It was built as a torpedo dive bomber, the first of its kind made entirely from metal. It could carry a variety of deadly payloads, from 6 250-pound bombs to a 450-pound depth charge or a huge 1,600-pound torpedo. The Barracuda made its maiden flight in December 1940 and was operated by the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm. At the discovery site under the Solent, a team from Wessex Archaeology have been brought in to try to raise this extraordinary plane from the seafloor.
The aircraft is buried in a buttery type mud, which is not easy when it comes to excavation. Above the seabed, very little remains. But as we are excavating down, more and more is becoming open to us.
More than 2,600 Barracudas were built, but not a single complete plane survives today. Dave Morris from the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Somerset is heading up an ambitious project to reconstruct an entire Barracuda using salvaged parts.
We have crash site remains from a number of barracudas which have been recovered over more than 40 years of collecting now, but they've all been subject to, very fast collisions to high ground mountainsides. This is the first time that we've come across a barracuda which is largely still intact and in most of its original shape.
It will be a dream come true for Dave's rebuild project if the plane can be raised in one piece.
It's pretty amazing. You descend down the shot line and you see the remains of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine that is quite prominent on the seabed. As you go further back, there are the remains of the fuselage, the cockpit and the wings that are still in place.
Records note that a Barracuda took off on the 6th of January 1944 from HMS Daedalus, which is now the nearby Lyon-Solent airfield. It suffered engine failure and pitched into the sea. The pilot managed to bail out and survived the crash.
We know that it was a fairly smooth belly landing rather than a violent crash. We know the pilot escaped okay. So there's a lot of information we're putting together from records and also matching that against the evidence that we're finding on the seabed now.
Before the plane can be raised, a powerful underwater siphon pump is used to suck the mud out from around the fuselage and wings. But working out how to raise the plane intact is proving to be a significant challenge. The divers realise the frame is much more fragile than they previously thought. The mud is tightly packed into the individual component parts, making the plane very heavy and likely to break up on lifting.
We're going to have to dismantle the aircraft underwater because unfortunately it's too fragile to bring up in one piece.
Despite the setback, the divers have managed to isolate a large part of one of the wings and are carefully preparing it for lifting. Slowly, the unbroken wing piece is brought up from the seafloor. Once out of the water, the team need to work quickly.
It starts to decay as soon as it comes out. It's been in the sea for 75 years or so. When you're trying to conserve archaeological material, you want to try and keep it in the same conditions to how it's been. What we're going to do is wrap it up and then keep it at least wet, damp, to try and stop the corrosion continuing.
The plane hasn't come up in one piece, but as more parts are slowly brought to the surface, Dave Morris is optimistic.
Absolutely amazed to see, obviously, a piece of the Barracuda coming up after 76 years. Yeah, you can still tap on the aluminium. I expected it to be a lot more corroded, considering it's been down there for so many years.
Later on, we'll be following the recovered parts of the plane, which will be taken to the Fleet Air Arm Museum. For now, Dave still has high hopes he can use these parts to help complete his reconstruction of this long-forgotten plane. Our next dig is in the Lake District, where archaeologists are excavating the site of a very special hostel. It was a temporary home for hundreds of children who were rescued from concentration camps in Nazi-occupied Europe and brought to Britain to start a new life. On the shore of Lake Windermere, in the heart of the Lake District, is the village of Troutbeck Bridge. The archaeologists here are hoping to shed light on an incredible wartime story of survival against the odds.
The Holocaust isn't just something that happened in Eastern Europe. We have sites related to the Holocaust here on British shores. So this is one of them. We're excavating the remains of what we think is a hostel where Jewish children were brought at the end of the war.
The dig is organised by the Lake District Holocaust Project. It aims to remember the special role this area played in helping to rehabilitate children liberated from Nazi concentration camps at the end of the war. Two boys that came here in 1945 were Ike Alterman and Sam Laskier.
That's me, a cheerful little fella.
Life in Poland for these Jewish boys changed dramatically the moment Germany invaded in September 1939.
We were lined up The assessment came and started counting. Father was in front and I was behind him. And he said to me, stand on your tiptoe to make you look a bit taller than you are. Next to him was my mother, my sister, my little brother. All those on the right, stay where you are. All those on the left, march out through the front of the square there. That's my mother, my little brother, sister, never to be seen again.
Both boys were sent to a succession of concentration camps before ending up in Auschwitz-Birkenau.
You had a number tattooed. See, that was tattooed to me in Birkenau.
But then, in May 1945, the boys were finally liberated from a camp in Czechoslovakia.
We were in the wagon. We didn't know what was going on. But suddenly, we looked around, and there were no guards. They just disappeared. And that is the moment that we realized we were free. I am the one waving his hat. Everybody's so happy. We're alive. We're alive. We couldn't believe.
On the 13th of August, they were flown from Prague and brought by bus up to Windermere.
Well, I knew wherever they're taking me, it's going to be much better wherever I was.
The boys were housed in one of 3 hostels located on what was the Calgarth estate, a town that had been built during the war to house workers from the nearby Sunderland flying boat factory. After the war, the town was demolished and a school was built here. This is the first time the site has been excavated. The team are hoping to find evidence of one of the hostel buildings in the hope that they can learn something about the lives of the children that were brought here.
We're finding huge amounts still exist within the ground. So that includes the sort of types of material that the structures were made from. So we're finding bricks and concrete and mortar. We're finding things like window glass.
300 orphaned Jewish children were brought to the Lake District. They were known as the Windermere Boys.
Many of the children who came here had been in Bergen-Belsen, some of them had been in Auschwitz, but other slave labour camps, forced labour camps, in ghettos across Europe. So for many, many years, they'd experienced terrible, terrible atrocities. They were very much alone. They didn't know how many of their family members survived.
But not all of the Windermere Boys were actually boys. In fact, 28 of them were girls. Denise's mother, Minia, was one of them.
My mum was very proud to be one of the boys, although they were in the minority, because they made a fuss of the girls as well. They had plenty of boys to choose from.
Denise has been helping out with the dig.
We found lots of pieces of tiles and water pipes, or sewage pipes. We were thinking that it's probably some kind of bathroom. I was thinking my mum must have had to wash in the bathroom over there.
The team are finding lots of evidence of the hostel building, but precious few personal items.
One of the objects that we found, quite a poignant one, we think, and it's a little tiny plastic unicorn, which may or may not have been as a pendant around somebody's neck.
So this looks to be a really interesting find of a small penknife. It looks like it's made of mother of pearl, but it's so corroded that the blade can't actually come out. It's the kind of thing that, you know, a child would have had and really looked after and carried around with them everywhere.
It may have been more than 70 years ago, but Sam and Ike's memories of arriving in Windermere are still vivid.
First of all, we arrived at night, so we didn't know much. The following morning, you see the hills and the lake. We had our place near the lakes as well. And we thought, this is paradise.
This is the main hall. That's me. over here. There was beds, clean sheets, pillowcases. We would run outside, you know, we didn't have any proper things to wear. Some went out in their underpants and that. We were wild. We were wild. It was the most fantastic feeling.
Although the rescued children only lived here for 6 months, it was a life-changing experience. They were offered counselling and schooling, including English lessons, before being resettled elsewhere in the UK.
It is a very positive story of hope in a terrible time of despair. And I think it's really important to humanise the stories of refugees.
Today, Ike and Sam have come back to the village as they're keen to see the excavation.
It is very important, and it's very important that we also tell people what it was like. Although a lot of things have changed, but we kept the memories.
The dig has helped local residents reconnect with this unique and important time in their village's history.
Archaeology speaks to people in a special kind of way, and I think we owe the survivors and the children the chance to you know, put their story out there, and I think that's what archaeology can do.
I've invited Kevin to come and tell me more about the project.
Kevin, you've been digging in the Lake District, but your usual work focusing on the Holocaust takes you over to Eastern Europe. So this is a very different kind of dig for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot in Eastern Europe. Looking at the archaeology of what happened during the Holocaust takes us to Poland and Ukraine and those sort of areas. But this project gave us the opportunity to do something a little bit closer to home.
And you did find a selection of quite personal objects. So I think this one really stands out for me, this little horse.
So we're not sure whether it's a horse or a unicorn. I think it's a unicorn, or it's an important object. It dates to around late 30s, 40s, so it's the right sort of period, with a unicorn being a mythical creature associated with hope and magic.
Yeah.
To find that on the site where we were looking for evidence of what these boys went through and how they lived their life in Windermere, then that was a perfect start for us, actually, to
lovely.
find that.
Is it a little pendant?
A little pendant, yeah. Wear around the neck.
Yeah. What I find really kind of moving about this is that, you know, that might be something that I dig up in my garden at home, and it has very little meaning attached to it. In this context,
absolutely,
it comes with all that meaning.
And then
what's that? A tube?
Interesting, curly top. So it's a hair curling gel, but it's made for toddlers and babies.
Yes, it says for toddlers.
For toddlers.
Curly top.
So it's to make your baby's hair grow curly.
The natural hair curler for toddlers.
So it would have been a culture shock to these children to all of a sudden be in an environment where you could curl your baby's hair using a gel.
And then, what about this buckle?
Quite important. It's a belt buckle. It's quite common to the period. So we're talking sort of 1930s, 1940s, right through to the 50s. It could well be that this belonged to one of them.
What else have you got? There's a bottle top.
Yeah, V-nose, and that is a cough medicine. It just demonstrates that these children went from having no medical care whatsoever to all of a sudden to find themselves in a place where if they got a cough, they would be given some V-nose cough medicine by a nurse or a doctor.
Yeah.
It just demonstrates how dramatically their life changed overnight.
Yeah. And the care that was suddenly around them.
Absolutely.
Do you think finding objects like this, does it make it feel as though that time is more distant or closer to the present day when you find these objects?
The sort of argument here is that why do we do archaeology on such a recent period? Because we already know the answers, because we've got books and photographs and all sorts of things. But actually I think it's important because archaeologists look at evidence and data in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
So we are asking new questions of these archived documents and these data. So actually we can present new evidence, and that's what this project is all about. It's bringing to the forefront this little section of Windermere in the 1940s just to see what the life was like for these people.
We now turn our attention to another group of people who came to Britain during the war. In the build-up to D-Day, military camps sprung up right across the country. As well as housing British soldiers, these sites were home to thousands of Canadian and American troops. Our next dig comes from Salisbury, where a team of British ex-military personnel are hoping to find the remains of a barracks used by the 2nd Battalion of the US Army's 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, otherwise known as Easy Company. The men of this elite American parachute unit also came to be known as the Band of Brothers. They came to Britain in September 1943 and remained here for 9 months, preparing alongside other Allied troops for the D-Day invasion. Their training camp was located near the village of Aldbourne in Wiltshire. MOD archaeologist Richard Osgood is on site with members of Operation Nightingale. This is an initiative using archaeology to support the recovery of military personnel injured in conflict.
On the surface you can see nothing. This is just a sports pitch. What we wanted to do to see if archaeology could tell us anything about what lies below this surface and link us to those men from Easy Company and take us back to those days of D-Day.
We know from military photographs that in 1943 and 44, this field housed a number of wooden barracks. This was the first time these young soldiers had left their base in America.
Some of them described it as the best accommodation they had in the whole war, and others said they felt that they were on a Hollywood film set because this village is so beautiful.
But the paratroopers would soon leave this quaint Wiltshire village far behind. In the early hours of the 6th of June 1944, the men of Easy Company were dropped behind enemy lines in Normandy. Their mission to seize key bridges and clear routes leading away from Utah Beach to allow safe passage of US ground troops who would arrive by sea just a few hours later. The plan went awry, with many missing their drop zone. But they still managed to capture and destroy 4 German field guns, saving countless Allied lives. Easy Company went on to become one of the best-known Allied fighting forces in the war, even making it all the way to Hitler's mountaintop retreat in the Bavarian Alps. Back at the dig, the team are hoping to find some personal items. They want to gain a glimpse into the lives of these soldiers when they were stationed here during the weeks leading up to the D-Day invasion.
One of the really exciting bits about archaeology is when you're able to put yourselves literally in the footsteps of people that did incredible deeds in the past.
Already they're finding telltale structures just beneath the surface.
Not many people get excited by concrete necessarily, especially 20th century concrete, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pads of a building that were put into this field in the 1940s, and this is the remnants of the platoon sergeant's building.
What have you got there?
It looks like some sort of iron cooking pot, possibly.
It's a coin. It's a 1944 halfpenny.
They're also finding artefacts that directly link to Easy Company's pivotal role on D-Day.
Just pulled this out of the ground and we didn't have a clue what it was, but we borrowed Paul's book and we found out exactly what it was. It's the handle for the emergency parachutes. Yeah,
oh my
fantastic.
God.
There are even finds that don't often survive being buried.
Our military expert has now identified this as being parachute silk. You're standing in a hut used by Easy Company and you're touching a piece of parachute silk used by those paratroopers, and that's amazing. Is as good as a link to D-Day as you're ever going to get.
Eagerly sought personal items are also surfacing. They're helping to paint a picture of life outside of combat training.
This is a fairly fun piece of evidence. It's a bottle of Brill cream that they'd have put in their hair to make themselves look presentable, having had their training and got themselves ready for an evening out. One of the local buildings was a place where the Americans did a lot of their dancing with the local girls. The story goes that they made such good use of that venue that at the end of the war they had to pay for the floor to be relaid. The hall still exists today. The floor's in really good condition.
The dig is giving a unique insight into the reality of daily life for these brave men just at that moment before they left Britain for D-Day in June 1944.
This particular room, and I'm just standing by the entrance looking into the hut, is their last moment of quiet, peace, tranquility, and probably a great deal of reflection before they dropped in on Normandy. And that adds a real element of pathos, I think, to this particular site.
I've asked Richard to bring in some of those personal items for a closer look.
And you've got some of the finds here from inside the hut, including that, which is extraordinary.
You know, the hairs on my back of my neck, when you find something like this, and we're talking paratroopers, this is a handle of a reserve parachute used by somebody in Easy Company.
So that's for your backup parachute?
That's right. Your first parachute is what's called a static line. It's pulled by the aircraft itself, and it opens up and you parachute down, hopefully, and if that doesn't work, you've got that to keep you alive.
And you've got some smaller objects, so talk me through these. What have we got here? A badge?
Well, that's a little touch of them being very human, in fact. It's a basketball supporters badge.
Let's get it under there. So there's a little basketball on there.
That's right. It says, I support, but tantalisingly, we don't know who this individual soldier supported. So you've got a little trace of them being keen on life back home, but just whom we don't know.
And this looks like something which you'd find on the head of a guitar.
I think it's a mandolin.
Oh, right.
They're passing time playing musical instruments, one of the ways that they kept themselves occupied in the evenings.
And what's this?
That is a nylon stocking found in the hut. I don't know how far we go into that. maybe some chap who'd used a lot of Brill cream and had done pretty well on his dancing skills.
Had a small gift with him.
There are numerous histories and anecdotes of the guys giving kids sweets and chewing gum, things like that, and luxuries like these stockings. So it's all part of that liaising with the locals and getting them on side. It's a nice, tantalising touch again that this soldier might have had maybe happier things happening before they went to D-Day.
Yeah. And it is like we're looking at a little American colony in 1940s Britain.
That's right. We've got one small trench, but it's given us loads of finds relating to a pivotal moment in history and a really famous group of young men. And it is about Americana, it's about what they're doing to fight, what they're doing to try and stay human. And it's just a small keyhole into those days of 1943 and 1944. And as such, I think it's actually quite a fascinating little collection of finds.
And I think what's interesting too is that you're digging with veterans who are bringing their own experiences to bear on the archaeology they're uncovering.
Completely. We had several British military guys with us who have faced combat, so they know the sorts of experiences and traumas that these men have faced. And for them, that was a really important and powerful thing, because they could directly connect to the men of Easy Company, albeit from a 21st century perspective.
Yeah.
And therefore, finding this sort of thing for them was quite an emotional experience, I think.
We now return to the raising of the Ferry Barracuda bomber from the murky waters just off the south coast. All of the parts that were recovered had now been transferred to the Fleet Air Arm Museum in Somerset, and our roving archaeologist Nisha McSweeney is there to see how the team is attempting to reconstruct this long-forgotten bomber.
The discovery of an intact Barracuda bomber was a world's first. But sadly, the salvage team could not raise it in one piece and had to bring it up in parts. At the Fleet Air Arm Museum, Dave Morris is head of an ambitious project to rebuild a whole Barracuda using only original parts. For the last 40 years, they've been collecting fragments salvaged from various crash sites. But these are very difficult to use in the rebuild because they're so battered and mangled. This could all be about to change with the treasure trove of parts raised over several days from the Solent. So Dave, where are we so far with the project, putting this giant multiple jigsaw pieces back together?
If you were to look at basically the plan form of a Barracuda and think, OK, let's build one of those, I think you would stop on day one. It would just become too mind-boggling.
Chief Engineer William Gibbs has been working on the project for 5 years. He has to identify each specific part, then work out where they go. It's a complex process.
So we might put something together and then it has to come apart again.
Okay.
Which is annoying, but it's just part of the process.
So far, he's rebuilt the cockpit. So just help me visualise this a bit more. You've got the pilot sitting here, you've got the wings over here. This is the nose of the aeroplane going behind us?
The engine, yes.
The engine.
The engine would fit in front there, in front of the pilot. So we've got the engine and propeller there, and then the remainder of the aircraft. And the tail would be 30 or so feet down in that direction. So it's just a big airplane.
This is a huge plane. The project is already providing a glimpse into the working lives of the people who built these planes more than 70 years ago.
On here we've got drawings, pencil drawings, done in the factory. We were the first people to see those drawings since they were doodled on in the Bolton and Paul factory, in the factory. Pretty poor factory behaviour. You shouldn't go scribbling and doodling on airplanes, but this was wartime Great Britain, and there was a little bit of camaraderie and morale going on.
Dave is now pinning his hopes on sections of the Barracuda raised from the Solent, providing a mountain of usable parts to help complete the build.
We started finding there were hundreds of really valuable fittings, tube ends, constructional details, components for the Barracuda that we could harvest. You can't even begin to measure how useful this is for the project.
As well as large sections such as the fuselage and the wing piece, outside the hangar, individual parts harvested from the Solent wreck are undergoing chemical preservation. So what have you got in these tanks? What's the magic solution that's getting rid of all this gunk?
This is just ordinary fresh water, tap water mixed with citric acid.
The citric acid helps reduce the alkalinity of the seawater, producing a more neutral pH solution. This helps to stabilize the parts and reduce any further degradation. Let's see what we got.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Piece of pipe, bit of collecting pipe, and then we've got.
Ooh, yuck.
And the rubber's incredibly supple.
Is that rubber?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this one does not smell good. There's a long way to go before all the components salvaged from the Solent wreck will be ready for use in the reconstruction of the plane. But Dave has already made some astonishing discoveries.
These are a pair of batteries from the Solent wreck, two 12-volt batteries, dated June 43. We couldn't resist putting a tester on the batteries, and one of them still has 0.86 residual volts of current in it. It's absolutely remarkable that after 76 years on the seabed, absolutely. So there are some remarkable, quirky little finds coming up from the Solent wreck.
I don't think I've ever seen a conservation challenge quite like this one. I'm used to working out on site with conservators to put together ancient pottery or other kinds of artifacts, and that's extremely difficult to do, but this is something on a different scale, right? The complexity of it is just ramped up hugely. The rebuild project has many years of work ahead, but Dave is now confident that with the Solent wreck, one day he will be able to wheel out a complete Barracuda, the very last of its kind.
We now move from British planes to German military hardware. One of the most destructive weapons developed by Nazi Germany was the V2 rocket, the forerunner to later ballistic missiles. Each rocket bore a warhead containing 900 kilograms of explosives, and it's thought that around 3,000 rockets were launched at Allied targets during the Second World War. We now join two brothers who are on the search for a V2 rocket, which fortunately never hit its target and ended up in a farmer's field. The hunt is focused near the village of Marden in Kent. Amateur military archaeologists Colin and Sean Welsh are on the trail of a V2 that struck here at 2:15 a.m. on the 9th of March 1945. Aerial imagery taken after the war shows it came down in this field.
We've excavated several V2 rockets and V1 flying bombs, so I'm afraid to say we've become experts.
The V2 was the forerunner to rockets that would eventually put a man on the moon. It was invented in Germany in the 1930s and later developed as an explosive missile by the Nazis. The key to its long range was the innovation of using liquid oxygen and alcohol to propel the rocket. At the dig in Kent, the brothers hope that the remains of the rocket could reveal clues to its trajectory and how it detonated. To help locate the impact site, they use a portable magnetometer.
If there are large steel parts in the ground, that will then cause a disturbance to the magnetic orientation in the ground. The magnetometer will detect that and give us a signal.
Using the survey results, they map out what they believe is the extent of the impact crater, now buried underground. And they start to dig. Just a metre down, and they're already finding indirect evidence of the detonation.
There was an orchard here, and obviously the trees were destroyed, and the damaged trees were pushed back into the hole and buried with the infill. And the one that you can see standing up just there, that's got a broken off top, which would have been caused by the blast of the device.
Strong magnetometer readings down in the hole indicate they're still on target. The heavy clay soil makes it difficult to locate small finds, but it does have its benefits.
This is the tiniest little bit here, and the aluminium looks almost fresh in the find, and that's because of the absence of oxygen in the hole. That's a good sign. It means that any future finds are going to be, hopefully, in a good state of preservation.
The V2 had a maximum range of 320 kilometres and travelled at over 1,000 metres per second.
It was travelling so fast that you could be stood at this spot and not know that a V2 was approaching. You wouldn't see it coming, you wouldn't hear it coming.
Launched at Britain from sites in the Nazi-controlled Netherlands, the V2s caused an estimated 9,000 British civilian and military deaths. As the brothers dig deeper, recognisable pieces of the rocket are now starting to emerge.
This is one of the support brackets for either the oxygen tank or the alcohol tank. That's quite a nice find. Let's just see what my brother concurs.
Right, well, I know what it is. But that's one of the clamps for the fuel tanks.
But I just said that I'd get you to confirm it with me.
OK, so you haven't told... Well,
I've told them.
OK, well, I'll come down again, show what a pair of nerds we are, that we know every bit of a V2 rocket.
Should be nearby. There's something...
Deeper still, and key parts of the supersonic engine are coming to light.
It doesn't look like very much at the moment, but this is a burner cup from the combustion chamber of the V2 rocket. I can tell that it's a burner cup because of that little bit of brass there, which was an injector nozzle. So alcohol was pushed through that to squirt a feed into the combustion chamber. There were 18 of these, and this is the first one out of our excavation. 3.1.
As the excavation continues, the brothers make an intriguing discovery, linked to the precise moment of impact.
When we look down in there, we can see that the clay itself has changed colour. Rather than the nice bright yellow-orange in the surrounds, it's a horrible grey colour, which I think is due to the carbonisation of the materials.
The V2 was exploding as it travelled into the ground at 3 times the speed of sound. The detonation couldn't keep up with how fast it was travelling, so it got in at least 5 feet into the ground before it actually detonated.
This is a fascinating revelation.
The original intention was to try and create something like a blast weapon on the surface. What they didn't bargain for, the supersonic speed, took the rocket further into soft ground than they might have expected.
This V2 rocket had clearly gone off target when it hit the field. And it only detonated once it had penetrated the ground. The blast from its warhead would have been absorbed by the clay. 6 meters down, the brothers finally reached the bottom of the impact crater. The plan now is to clean and preserve the finds and scan them to create a digital archive.
I quite enjoy the physics of the excavation. I particularly enjoy building a representation of what it was that happened at the site. We found a lot about the geology and what it does to the finds. I think we've done pretty well.
Colin and Sean's excavation is part of an ongoing investigation into the role this terrifying weapon had on Britain during the war. Prior to D-Day in June 1944, the Allied forces staged a number of rehearsals of the landings, all in top secret. One of these was called Operation Tiger, and it would end in absolute tragedy. But because of the secrecy, very few people knew about it. Then, in the 1970s, one man uncovered evidence of the event and fought to bring the story to light. Nisha McSweeney met his son.
The incident took place off the Devon coast near Slapton Sands. Operation Tiger may have remained a forgotten moment in history if it wasn't for the amateur archaeological sleuthing of a local man named Ken Small. I'm meeting his son Dean to find out more.
When did your father first begin to suspect that there was something out there?
He was beachcombing and he came across things like tunic buttons, empty shell cases, identity bracelets, various parts of identity bracelets, all these bits, knives and forks, spoons, parts of them. And he thought, well, this is weird. Why would this be on a beach?
A local fisherman added to the mystery. He told Ken about a spot just out from the beach where their nets would snag on something large underwater. In the summer of 1974, Ken persuaded a diver friend to go down and take a look.
My dad took him out in a boat. He dived down, he came up and he said to my dad, it's a tank. And my dad said, well, what, an oil tank, water tank? He said, no, it's like an army tank. And my dad just thought, this is crazy, how can this be?
Ken started to search local records and military archives for answers. It was then that he stumbled across a wartime exercise, codenamed Operation Tiger. Operation Tiger was carried out in April 1944. It was one of a number of practice exercises involving troops from Britain, the US and Canada that all took place in preparation for the Normandy landings. 30,000 US troops were sent to Slapton Sands to rehearse their part in D-Day.
All of this stuff was completely covered up. So there was very little evidence as to what went on, the actual exercises themselves.
Determined to find out more about the tank, in May 1984, Ken took amateur maritime archaeology to a new level. With the help of friends and local divers, he raised the tank off the seafloor.
They got a big bulldozer, they strapped a cable to it, and they started to pull it along the concrete slipway. And amazingly, the tracks started to turn.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and then all the crustacea and stuff that had grown on the tank over years of being under the water all started to break away and crumble off. And you can actually see grease still on the thing. It's just amazing.
The tank was immediately jet cleaned and sprayed with rust preventer to protect it from decay.
So, this is it?
This is the tank.
It's enormous! It's amazing to think about this under the water, and of course they were snagging their nets. And
yeah.
Dean, this is crazy for me. So I'm used to when I dig up, iron objects from the Iron Age, they come up as like really crusty, corroded things. It's hard to tell what they are, but this is in fabulous condition.
Ken had recovered an American amphibious Sherman DD tank.
So what happens is, all around the tank, there's this flotation collar, and it's raised with compressed air upwards, and it forms a complete skirt around the tank.
Fantastic. So it's a fully amphibious tank. Tank, boat, tank.
While the DD tank was ahead of its time, it could be quite unreliable. Several of them, including the one Ken raised off the seafloor, were known to have sunk during the D-Day rehearsals due to mechanical faults. But as Ken investigated further, he discovered that Operation Tiger wasn't just blighted by technical problems. Something far more deadly had occurred. By early 1944, the Germans knew Allied forces were planning to invade Nazi-controlled France. They just weren't sure where or when. By listening in to the Allied radio chatter, they got wind of Operation Tiger. On the 28th of April 1944, 9 German E-boats were sent out on patrol and headed for the coast of Devon. Armed with torpedoes, these were highly maneuverable, deadly attack craft. That night, Allied ships taking part in Operation Tiger came under attack. 2 US tank landing ships were sunk and 3 more badly damaged. More than 700 US servicemen drowned or died of hypothermia as they waited to be rescued. In 2012, 2 wartime shipwrecks known to lie off the Devon coast were formally identified as the 2 tank landing ships, or LSTs, that were sunk during Operation Tiger. As part of a project to grant the wreck special status, maritime archaeologist Graham Scott is heading out to survey them.
What's really important about these wrecks is that they're associated with D-Day, and they're associated with practices for D-Day. Historic England have asked us to investigate these wrecks for them and to advise them what's left of them and how important they are.
Now anchored over the wrecks, they prepare to send down a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV. Equipped with sonar and specialist low-light cameras, the team can stream a live feed from 50 metres down, direct to the control room.
Okay, mate, that's us. We got visual. We'll just work out what we're doing.
Let's orientate ourselves and let's move along to the west.
Today, Graham is concentrating on one of the ships. He wants to assess what state it's in, what equipment it was carrying, and any potentially live munitions still on board.
We are wondering whether we have found a gun here. We are rather hoping that this is evidence of the ship's armament. We could be wrong.
You start tethering easy. Tethering easy.
One thing we have to be careful with on a wreck like this is the presence of ammunition. We don't touch any of that. We back the ROV away to a safe distance. We've no real idea whether these things are still viable. We've got to treat them as though they could still potentially explode if we blunder into them.
Moving along the boat, the ROV camera captures a lifeboat crane, a cargo net, and the engine.
The hull is upside down. These were very shallow drafted vessels and they tended to capsize when they sank.
We now know that on the night of the attack, chaos ensued.
The men on board the landing ships thought that the firing initially was part of the exercise. And it was only when one of the ships was torpedoed and they saw this massive explosion that they realized they were actually under attack. And then all hell breaks loose. Everybody starts firing everywhere. Very confusing.
Following the deadly Nazi attack, the Operation Tiger disaster was quickly covered up. It remained largely unknown for decades, until Ken Small found and raised his tank. While the tank was not sunk in the enemy attack, it now stands as a permanent memorial to all the US servicemen who lost their lives during the D-Day rehearsal. Ken's son Dean still has his father's collection of artifacts.
These didn't come out of the tank.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. This one here is a rangefinder, and this, I believe, is used to work out the elevation for the main gun. The main gun in the turret of the tank.
Yeah, line of fire.
Line of fire. Yeah.
In recognition of Ken's determination to bring the story of Operation Tiger to light, and remember the American soldiers who lost their lives. He received a letter of gratitude from the president.
Dear Mr. Small,
Yes.
on behalf of all Americans, thank you for your kind and generous efforts. Sincerely, Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important story that deserves to be much more widely told. I mean, it's a big kind of part of the preparations for D-Day, which we just hadn't heard about. It took someone like Ken to get that story out there and to give those people who died and their families and the survivors a voice and something to kind of remember it by.
During the war, Northern Ireland had 28 airfields home to both RAF and US Army Air Force crews. Whether through combat damage, mechanical failure or pilot error, not every plane returned home. For our final dig, a team of archaeologists has been joined by an army of volunteer schoolchildren from both sides of the Irish border, and they are excavating the site of a crashed American fighter plane. On December the 17th, 1942, 22-year-old American pilot, Second Lieutenant Milo Rundell, was returning to the Royal Naval Air Station at Eglinton when he went off course. As part of an ongoing project to highlight the role played by Northern Ireland during the war, aviation historian Johnny McNee has been trying to find Rundell's plane.
We have eyewitnesses said a plane crashed in this direction. What we're trying to work out from the archaeology, is that correct? And the orientation of the aircraft did it go in vertically? Did it sort of bounce across the field and then sadly bury itself into a corner?
Rundell parachuted safely down into Northern Ireland and returned to base. But his plane hit the ground somewhere near the town of Castle Blaney in County Monaghan, just south of the border in Ireland. While parts of the plane were recovered at the time of the crash, it hit the ground so hard that much of it still lies buried.
We're fairly sure that these are engine parts. Lots of cables, clamps, ducts, bits of very contorted and smashed up metalwork with a distinct aroma of fuel off it.
It looks to be part of the outside we're thinking because it has that greenish paint on it.
Not 100% sure. We have a long hinged object here. Could be a door, could be... It's very light material.
Records reveal that Lieutenant Rundell was flying a US fighter plane known as a Lockheed P-38 Lightning. The P-38 was the first fighter aircraft to fly faster than 400 miles per hour. With its 4 nose-mounted machine guns and 20mm cannon, it was feared by Allied enemies. The Japanese called it 2 planes, 1 pilot because of its unusual design. The Germans knew it as the fork-tailed devil. Back at the dig, Johnny is now finding clues that can be traced back to where the plane was manufactured.
We're finding lots of these little fuel clamps. And these clamps hold, the insulation and rubber tubing around various parts. You can see the manufacturer, the patent number, so it's Witex Manufacturing Company, Chicago, USA. And even look at that. Still threaded, still working.
We know that Witex made fuel clamps for the P-38, so the team are definitely digging in the right place. Johnny is now recognising other specific parts of the plane.
That's a serious bit of sheet steel. That must be 5, 6, 7 mil thick, so it's not light aluminium. It's there for a purpose, and that purpose would be to stop bullets hitting the pilot or the engine components.
Confident they have found Rundell's P-38 Lightning, the layout and condition of the wreckage is also providing clues as to how it crashed.
The debris that we're getting here suggests that the aircraft did enter the ground almost, I would say, at about a 70, 80 degree angle into the ground. So you've got to imagine this iconic design, 2 engines, without a pilot, roaring from across the sky, running low on fuel from the west. It's come in almost vertical into our stony field. And this iconic design has been turned in a matter of seconds into this crumpled pile of metal that you can see.
For the schoolchildren volunteers, the dig is giving them a tangible connection to the brave young pilots that were based near here almost 80 years ago.
Sort of bringing history to life. So it's like relating the artifacts to what we're learning, and we can see really like what happened and how it would have like looked in an outside perspective.
I've asked Johnny to bring in some of the finds to see what else we can learn about this plane and its pilot.
So what have we got here then? Where do these parts belong to on the Lightning?
You've got little inlet exhaust valves from the engine, broken bits of the cockpit that locks the cockpit latches down when you shut it and go flying. And you can see the little serrated buttons here just for locking your cockpit closed. We have some of the perspex, still with the distinct wartime olive drab paint on it. And some of the very fearsome nose armament was also recovered. So we have 2 50 caliber bullets. There are 4 50 caliber Browning machine guns on the front, plus a 20mm cannon.
And then there's a plate here.
Yes, that was one of the star finds by the pupils. I mean, they really were forensically going through the soil. And one of them said, "Oh, I've got a little plate with writing on it." And you can see there all the drawing information, the contract, the date, tells you the oil capacity, and then right at the bottom, Lockheed Aviation Corps. So that 100% proves that we were dealing with the crash of a Lockheed P-38. That was a good find.
Well, what on earth are those?
They came out, if you can imagine in our profile, we had engine wreckage, cockpit wreckage, and engine wreckage. And these were in the cockpit. And there was a lot of head scratching amongst the team. You know, people were suggesting they were like butter paddles or they were something agricultural.
Yeah.
And we put some articles into the P-38 Association magazine in America and said, does anybody know what these are? Before we make some grand announcement and look stupid.
No.
And a guy came back and says, your plane was going to fly in the Mediterranean Theatre of Operations. Those go into the air intakes to stop that sandy wind from blowing in and clogging up your engines. And then you can see traces of yellow paint on the handle, so they would flag up as you're doing your walk around in the morning. Right, I better take these out.
Yeah, you don't want to fly with them still in, do you?
No, that would be a bad day.
And what happened to the pilots themselves?
Yes, so Second Lieutenant Milo Rundal from Iowa. He then goes to Tunisia, and less than a month later, he is shot down, and he ends up being captured and then taken to Stalag Luft 3, and he was there for the rest of the war, and he was there during the time when the Great Escape was taking place.
Is he still with us?
No, sadly he passed away in 2006, but his daughter tells us that he was a great patriot, loved the P-38, and he did a lot of flying after the war as well, but a lot of time for the P-38. And when I said, what do you think he would think of what, you know, we and the pupils are doing here?
Yeah.
And he said, like, that generation, he would have laughed. I said, what are you doing, you know, looking after my old P-38? You know, what's all the fuss about?
Yeah.
He was just that, you know, greatest generation type of a character.
Although the Second World War happened just 80 years ago and we have plenty of historical records of the time, archaeology provides us with different insights and personal connections with this important episode in our country's history. We might be a small island, but we've got an epic history. And there's a wealth of untold secrets still to uncover. So every year, hundreds of archaeologists dig, dive, and sift to find clues.
Absolutely never seen anything like it before.
It's amazing.
In 2018, their discoveries have been more exciting than ever.
Look at that.
So that's from a tank then? That's brilliant.
That's a nice find.
Not bad for day 2.
Not bad at all.
Each excavation has been filmed as it happened by the archaeologists themselves. Their dig diaries mean that we can be there for every exciting moment of discovery.
And you imagine him looking every shoulder, trying to get away from the enemy aircraft through that.
I'll be in the lab where the teams will bring in their finds from pottery and metalwork to human remains, and we'll take a closer look to find out what these new digs can tell us about our ancestors. Look at that.
Be very careful.
I will be careful. Oh my goodness. While archaeologist Raksha Dave looks into the analysis that goes on long after a dig is finished.
Somebody stabbed her in the back of the head. What an awful way to go.
Welcome to Digging for Britain. In this programme, I'm joining archaeologists in the west of the country to share their biggest discoveries. At Silchester, we investigate a monumental bathhouse, revealing how the Romans first stamped their mark on Britain.
The preservation of the blocks and the bricks is absolutely superb.
In Bath, construction work beneath the magnificent medieval Abbey takes us on an incredible journey through the city's multi-layered hidden past.
This is probably late 13th or 14th century. Quite incredible that this has survived.
And near Winchester, a team unlocked the secrets of a vast 18th century military camp occupied by a horde of German mercenaries.
There's gold leaf on it. It's really, really shiny. It's not the sort of thing you expect in a military field kitchen.
No, not at all.
And at the Museum of Somerset in Taunton, I'll discover how objects here help us tell the story of the West. Our first dig takes us off the coast of Portsmouth to a major underwater investigation into an 18th century ship that revolutionised the Royal Navy. There are around 40,000 ships wrecked around the British coastline, but the chance to excavate one is incredibly rare. It is monumentally expensive and usually only happens when the ship is of national importance and under threat of destruction. Now, both are true for HMS Invincible, and this is the largest underwater excavation since the Mary Rose. For centuries, our nation's power lay in our maritime might. But at the start of the 18th century, Britain's navy was in danger of losing its edge. Then, in 1747, the Royal Navy captured the French ship l'Invincible, a cutting-edge, streamlined 74-gun ship that could literally blow anything out of the water. Renamed HMS Invincible, it became the flagship of the British Navy until it ran aground on the 19th of February, 1758. The wreck of the Invincible provides us with an unprecedented opportunity to discover how the 18th century Navy was being revolutionised. And now that shifting sands are putting the wreck under threat, no expense is being spared to recover as much as possible. A combined team from Bournemouth University, the Maritime Archaeology Trust and the National Museum of the Royal Navy is carrying out this £2 million project to salvage the remains of the wreck. And halfway through the 3-year project, the clock is ticking to retrieve what evidence is left.
It's all about trying to recover as much as we can, record it as quickly as we can, because during the winter we have high energy storm events, and this is exposing vulnerable and fragile artefacts as well as the ship structure.
The maritime archaeologists rely on huge suction tubes to suck up the sand and blow it away from the site. They're constantly battling the threatening tides. But on day one, precious artefacts begin to surface. One of the first things to come up, a fully intact gunpowder barrel.
There would have been over 300 barrels of gunpowder on board.
That's the gunpowder. And actually you see underwater when they're moving it, you just get clouds of black. It is a pretty bad smell. So that's the sulphur.
It's a great start, indicating that some of the key armaments are still on board. And with their expert eyes scouring the wreck, the divers are soon rewarded with even more gun accessories.
These coins here, coins were used for supporting the breech end of the guns, clearly labelled with the gun type. So here we have the 9-pounder coin, and next to it, the much larger 32-pounder coin.
Everything's labelled. So when you've got the chaos of battle going on, they know exactly where to go to get the 32-pounder coin, the 9-pounder.
With every new discovery, the archaeologists are revealing why Invincible was such a formidable ship. And it wasn't just her superlative firepower.
We're learning where they stored things, how they stored things. It shows the organisation, the professionalism, the discipline.
As the season nears its end, the archaeologists suddenly make their most exciting discovery yet. Guns. The Invincible bristled with an amazing 74 cannons, but until now the team had thought that many of these had been recovered when the ship was wrecked.
But what's really important about this is an unexpected find. We assumed that all of the guns that weren't jettisoned were recovered from the Invincible, so it's great that we found these.
These guns are a rare and important discovery, and I've invited site directors Dan and Dave into the studio to discuss the team's finds and what they've learned about the ship that revolutionised our Navy. Dan, looking at you excavating this ship, it looks as though it's incredibly shallow.
It is. The site is only in 8 to 9 metres of water.
And being that shallow, presumably as soon as you do get a storm, it's hugely at risk because the energy of the waves will be transmitted down.
Exactly.
Then material becomes exposed. You can see from the two blocks at the end there, they were identical when made and they both ended up in the water at the same time. But one is still perfect and that was buried within the wreck. But once things are exposed, they're a food source for marine life and they just disappear.
And is this one of the smaller guns that came up?
Yes, this is called a swivel gun. It's an anti-personnel weapon. So it's when you come close to the enemy, when you're side by side. And we found them low down on the ship. So they weren't in use at the time. So we're learning something new, that they stored these weapons and were only going to bring them out when they needed them, when they were at close quarters with the enemy. And we weren't expecting to find these. So it was a really nice addition to the finds.
And I think one of the most overwhelming things is the smell. Is that the rope that we can smell?
That is the rope. It kind of takes you back in time.
Yeah.
This is a smell that hasn't changed since 1758. And this is exactly what the sailors would have smelt. It's that tar, it's the pitch.
Tarry, yeah. And it still smells 250 years later.
I know, I really love it. It enables us as archaeologists to really sense what it was like on board the ship.
Yeah.
And we found out that it's actually junk. So it wasn't going to be used in the rigging. It was going to be used in the making of these objects, which are known as gun wads.
So the old rope that's in the bottom of the ship is there to be picked apart and made into these wads?
That's it. So it's for the process of loading and firing the guns. You would load the cannons, ramming down your powder charge with this. This is a rammer head. You would then ram down one of those wads to kind of seal the charge. You would then ram down the shot. And to stop that shot rolling back out the barrel of the gun, you would have to ram down another wad.
Yeah.
So they're essential.
And what about these pieces of wood here with marks on? What are they?
And these are tally sticks that went with these wads to show which size of gun they would be used for. So in Roman numerals, we have 32 for the 32-pounder.
And 24.
And 24 for the 24-pounder. So this shows the organisation on board.
And what have you got in that box?
Well, what I've got here is a small timer.
Look at that.
It's used for calculating the speed of the vessel.
Dave, is that glass?
That's glass.
And it's intact?
It's intact, as it was when the ship sank, and it was found on the shelf it was placed on when it was last used.
Can I hold it?
You can, but be very careful.
I will be careful.
OK.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's a 28-second timer, because you run a length of rope over the stern of the vessel with knots in every 47 feet.
Yeah.
And after 28 seconds, the number of knots that have run through your hands are the speed of the vessel.
Yeah, yeah.
So they have 28 seconds. That's what, that's where knots comes from, that's right.
I just cannot believe that this has survived intact 250 years on the seabed, and it's made of wood and glass, and there it is, it's perfect. And I'm really nervous about holding it, so I'm going to hand it back to you,
Should we put it back?
Okay, oh, my goodness. So what we've got here is an astonishing demonstration of the level of organisation that was going on in the Navy by the 18th century.
That's it. We have the evidence for a well-organised, disciplined Navy, which is a complete contrast to the previous century, where they're a lot more dysfunctional. There's been catastrophic disasters due to a lack of discipline and organisation on board.
This ambitious dig has revealed exactly why HMS Invincible became the model for future cutting-edge ship design in the British Navy, and why in the century that followed, Britain could boast that it ruled the waves. We stay in the 18th century next as we head to Barton Farm near Winchester, to a dig that gives us a rare insight into an unusual, forgotten moment in Britain's military past. Archaeologists were called in to evaluate this site before a new housing development got started, because historical plans recorded that a vast military encampment had stood here in the 18th century, housing 9,000 German soldiers. These were not prisoners of war, nor an invading force that has somehow slipped under the historical radar. These troops were invited here. In 1756, King George II, of German descent himself, invited an army from Hesse in Germany over to keep Britain safe and to wage wars against its enemies. This is the first opportunity to get a really detailed insight into what life was like in the Hessian camp, and also perhaps a clue as to what made them such a formidable fighting force. A team from Reconstruct Archaeology is carrying out the dig into this unique German camp, joined by MOD archaeologist Richard Osgood and his team of ex-soldiers turned archaeologists.
This is where the Hessians were based in 1756. They were here for 10 months in what was a pretty cold and miserable winter. And to get themselves shelter, they dug down into the solid chalk. They provided themselves with dugouts, with field kitchens, in quite a regular pattern.
The team have a contemporary plan of the camp. However, they don't know how accurate it is or what the internal structures were really like. But once they start digging, the outlines of the camp are clearly visible in the hard chalk, and it seems to be even more massive and highly regimented than they'd thought.
These square features are the footprints of field kitchens, and the camp extended for a distance of some 1 kilometre from roughly where we're speaking, right over in the far distance towards the houses over there.
The whole camp is far too big to dig in its entirety, and the team are only focusing on the field kitchens and the dugouts affected by the housing development. They hope that this will tell them how both were constructed and what living conditions might have been like, and they quickly find their first clues.
So it looks like we've got the neck of a bottle here.
Oh, cool.
The glassware's very similar to wine bottles.
As digging continues, the team finds further tantalising clues about life in the German soldiers' camp.
We are finding loads and loads of oyster shells. We've also got clay pipes. Now, it's quite tempting to think of these Hessians actually sitting around eating oysters, which were much more commonplace as a food substance in those days, and smoking away.
The finds are painting a picture of how the Hessian troops whiled away the hours waiting for action. And although this is essentially temporary accommodation, the dugouts are well built and would have been surprisingly comfortable.
The really lovely thing about this is this chimney. It's a remarkable feature. You've got a series of mortared bricks in place, and then you've got a mortared area up here which forms the flue of the chimney, and this must have been a real godsend. Absolutely critical, from having spoken to the soldiers on the site, is keeping yourself warm in the dugouts. The other thing we've got in this area is a series of stake holes cut into the chalk, and those represent where timber uprights were put in place. They would have enabled the roof structure, probably like a tent, to go over the top.
The preservation of the dugouts is creating a remarkably clear picture. These were solidly built, heated structures, roofed over with canvas. Quite cosy then, but also cramped, as up to 50 men could have been living in each one. As well as the dugouts, the other main features on site are a string of field kitchens that catered for the 9,000-strong horde of soldiers, and they're producing some equally interesting finds.
What have you got, Rob?
So it's a mid-18th century pot, red glazed pot.
And this is in one of the little ovens cut into the Hessian field kitchen.
Hessian cookhouses.
That's super cool. What have you found?
Well, I've got a little pin, which is beautifully preserved, and also just found a little button.
I mean, that'll clean up beautifully, won't it? It's still got really nice decoration on it, but it's also got gold leaf on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's really, really shiny. It's not something you expect in a military field kitchen.
No, not at all.
This is such an intriguing and unusual site. I've invited Richard and site director Paul into the lab to find out more.
I think sites like this are great. We've got a very clear idea of what's there from this map, but actually still it's quite difficult to imagine how this plays out on the ground and, you know, the organisation of it. So to have this opportunity is fantastic.
Yeah, to know the actual structural form of these dugouts and the kitchens and the sorts of elements that they indicate about the lives of the people that were here in 1756, you can get a certain amount from this, but you've got to do the digging to find out.
Because looking at this, it just looks like a tented camp, doesn't it? You're not really given that idea that it's
like a
much
kind
more
of Glastonbury
permanent.
or something, doesn't
yeah,
it? And,
yeah.
very
well,
different.
slightly regimented Glastonbury.
Exactly, what you probably better lose.
And Richard, you're there digging with soldiers who were in Operation Nightingale. Were they impressed?
A real envy that they
Yeah.
had such nice features in the 1750s compared to what they call shell scrapes nowadays and just little gouges into the ground, where these things were beautifully constructed.
With staircases and fireplaces, and
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
some of them with ledges to sit on, perhaps. And
Well, cutouts for candles in some places. They're quite ornate in many ways, and it's
Yeah.
perhaps surprising when you think of the conditions of the time that they have put so much effort into building these structures.
And that button we saw coming up in the trench, didn't we?
Yeah, that's the one from one of the field kitchens, and so you see the shiny gilding on it.
Yeah, they're quite ornate for soldiers, aren't they?
They don't look military, do they? They don't look martial. We're tempted to think that you see the little schematic illustrations in the plan of these locals coming out to look at the Hessians, because they must have been a real curiosity for folks from Winchester.
That's what these people in the
Coming out
carriages
to
are
look.
doing.
And it's
Yeah.
tempting to think that that sort of ornate button just might be dropped from one of these people who come to see their allies in the field in Winchester.
And you recovered quite a few finds, giving us a bit of an insight into the day-to-day lives of these soldiers.
Yes, soldiers spend a lot of time waiting for things to happen, don't they? And you imagine that they spent a lot of time sort of eating and smoking and drinking day after day, month after month. And here we have a very nice example of an enamelled glass schnapps bottle that presumably one of the members of the army actually brought with him, you know, with his own supply of special spirits, perhaps.
Yeah. So they're enjoying a bit of local beer and German schnapps in their dugouts. I think what's particularly interesting is that when you think of an efficient army, very often we focus on, you know, what they're doing in battle, tactics, all of that sort of thing. But actually, this is equally important, if actually not more important, how you keep troops well-fed, comfortable, in good fighting form when you're not actually on the front line.
Yeah, without decent logistics and morale, you're not going to succeed, and so that's a crucial part of this story for sure.
Yeah.
The dig has given us a unique insight into a forgotten moment in our military history. The order and sophistication of the camp revealing why the Hessians were such crack troops and were invited over by George II. And here, at the museum in Somerset, a rather personal item belonging to the king himself provides another insight into George's military campaigns and his connections with Germany.
Tom, tell me about these trousers then, or in fact, they're not really trousers, are they?
Well, I think we need to call them breeches. That's what they would have been called at the time. They're remarkable because they belong to no less a person than George II, King of England for 33 years, from 1727 to 1760. And more remarkably, he wore them at the Battle of Dettingen in Germany, and it was the very last time an English monarch led his troops into battle.
Quite an extraordinary item to be wearing and incredibly colourful. I mean, you know, he was not going for camouflage here.
No, he wanted to be a visible symbol of monarchy and of leadership, and he was renowned as being a very brave sovereign.
So he would have cut a fine and very noticeable figure wearing these bright red breeches, and
He
they've
would.
got gorgeous gold buttons as well.
They have, yes. The buttons are a very fine embellishment.
They're very beautiful. The material is slightly felty to the touch.
Yes.
Beautifully fine stitching, and I've noticed that the pockets are made of incredibly fine leather. So I've heard of kid gloves, but here are kid pockets.
Kid pockets, yes.
Yeah.
They're of the very highest quality, and as I suppose you'd expect for the King of England and the Elector of Hanover, he didn't settle for second best, even when he was on the battlefield.
So was George still, at this point, a ruler of Hanover?
Yes, he was. Throughout his life, he had two roles, as Elector of Hanover and as King of England.
But those Hanoverian connections surely explain why he later brings over the troops, the Hessian troops.
When he arrived in England in 1727, he found an army which was under strength and not at all experienced.
And Hessian troops were really the means by which he strengthened the British Army and made it fit for battle in European campaigns.
So how did the breeches end up here in the Museum of Somerset?
Well, they were purchased in 1982 as part of a job lot of costume, so that it's partly an accident, but it's a happy accident because some of the troops who fought at Dettingen were the 13th Regiment of Foot, who became the Somerset Light Infantry.
So there is a Somerset connection, and Somerset men would have seen George II riding into battle in these resplendent breeches.
They would, and it's very good that they've survived, and rather remarkable that they have.
Yeah.
Our next investigation takes us to Salisbury and into the labs of Wessex archaeology, where experts are analysing over 100 skeletons from a recently unearthed 19th century pauper's graveyard. In 2016, Wessex Archaeology began working alongside developers who were about to build on the disused new Covent Garden Flower Market site in Battersea, London. 150 years ago, a graveyard occupied this site, but everyone thought that it had been fully removed in the 1960s. So the team was surprised to find that a 100-metre strip at the edge of the cemetery still remained. In the 19th century, this was where the poorest would have been buried, so it's an exciting discovery. These skeletons have to be exhumed, ready for reburial, but this gives us a precious opportunity to look at life and death for some of the poorest people in 19th century Britain, just as cities were becoming utterly transformed by industrialisation. To find out what the post-excavation work can tell us about these individuals, archaeologist Raksha Dave is visiting the Wessex labs and meeting osteoarchaeologist Kirsten Dinwiddie.
I want to find out how months of forensic work is building up a detailed picture of the lives of each individual. The skeleton currently being analysed is a middle-aged woman.
So what we do is you use this osteometric board, and then you put the bone in.
Okay, very gentle there.
Yeah.
Right, so that is 44 centimetres.
Okay, so that indicates a fairly average stature.
The thing that I have noticed whilst picking up this bone is it looks really odd around here. It's a bit lumpy bumpy.
It's very lumpy bumpy. If you turn it over, you can see it really is quite disfigured. Around the bone you have a membrane called the periosteum. And if that gets inflamed or irritated in any way, it can cause the bone to overgrow.
So what would have caused that?
Well, any kind of inflammation, so it could be a direct trauma, but this doesn't look like that. The other cause could be some kind of infection throughout the body that might irritate and cause this reaction. And I've got fairly conclusive proof that she suffered from syphilis. If we look at the skull here, it's quite difficult to show, but if you look...
Oh, I can see actually from this angle. So this side is kind of smooth.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of like these knobbly bits here.
Yeah. The particular lesions, they're very characteristic of syphilis. So it sort of eats away at the bone, but then it starts healing. And as it heals, it sort of folds and rolls into the edges. So you get this kind of star-like pattern. And if you look at this, I can actually change the direction of the light source. And actually you can pick ones up.
Incredible.
So where you said it was smooth, you can actually see...
It actually isn't.
No. There is a lesion there.
Do we know if the syphilis was actually contracted or was it congenital?
We think that it was congenital, so that means that her mother had the disease and passed it on to her.
So she had syphilis all her life?
Yeah.
Do we know how she died?
Unusually so, we do in this case. If we just take her skull here, do you notice anything?
Is that what I think it is? Is that a puncture wound?
Yes, it is.
And am I right in thinking if this was an old wound, you would have actually seen signs of the bone regrowing back into
That's
that?
right, and there's absolutely no sign of that at all. And if you notice, it's all sort of folded in.
Somebody stabbed her in the back of the head?
Yeah, so that's just behind the right ear.
What an awful way to go. This poor woman.
This woman's murder may well have been unreported, as was often the case in poorer areas. But the prevalence of chronic diseases was documented. Surveys suggest that around 10% of the urban poor had syphilis, And further work here on a male skeleton is proving just how tough life was in Battersea's 19th century slums.
There is something that I can see,
yes,
and it's pretty obvious that it looks like somebody's sawn the top of his head off.
That's exactly what they've done. He's had a cranial autopsy, and if you look at the cut marks all around there, you can see where the teeth of the saw have gone round.
Oh yeah, because you can actually see the jagged movements that they've
That's
made.
right. In the 19th century, a craniotomy, removing the top of the head to look at the brain, was a common form of autopsy, especially if, like this man, the individual had suffered psychological or physical problems.
And his skull can tell us quite an interesting story.
I can see immediately that the bridge of his nose has disappeared.
Yes, it's been completely flattened, probably by a number of blows to the bridge of his nose.
So he's obviously been in a fight.
I think he's been in more than one fight. He's been in several fights. If you think of the classic boxer's nose, so it's almost straight like that. And also, he has actually lost his front teeth.
Do you think that's related to his fighting injuries?
It could well be. There's a canal that joins the nasal area to the mouth, and sometimes if that gets damaged, it can form a cyst in the area of trauma. And if you can see the shadow of a cyst, and it's got so large that actually it's worn away the bones there.
Gosh, that must have been incredibly painful.
Yeah, I mean, the pressure must have been quite uncomfortable. You could have had surgery to remove that, but he certainly wouldn't have had the money, so he would have had to have put up with that for his life.
Just from these two skeletons, it's clear that for many, the streets of early industrialised London certainly weren't paved with gold. Disease was rife, and looking at these individuals, beaten, bruised and murdered, life was pretty brutal.
Our next dig takes us to Silchester in Hampshire. Originally an Iron Age settlement, it grew into a Roman town, and since its discovery in 1864, it's been one of the richest Roman sites in Britain, offering a whole range of clues about the life of our Romano-British ancestors. Silchester is an exciting and important Roman site because the town, Caleva Atrebatum, fell into disuse rapidly and was never built over. So what we have is a perfectly preserved Roman town. University of Reading archaeologists have been digging there for more than 20 years, and this year they returned to focus on one particular area, the bathhouse. Now, this important public building should yield clues about how the Romans stamped their identity on Britain.
We've chosen the baths, one of the principal public buildings of the town, because there are questions about when the baths were built, how long they lasted, and about life in the baths. What sort of activities took place, the eating, drinking, the gambling, the hair plucking, the massage, all that sort of activity. What can we trace from the soil itself and from the artefacts that we find?
Because the bathhouse was originally dug 100 years ago, Mike knows exactly where it's located. And since Silchester was never built on after the Romans left, its foundations are quickly revealed. And it's not long until the team start uncovering the precious Roman artefacts they've been hoping for.
Can we see the coin, Libby? That's really clear, isn't it?
Yeah, so you've got a little figure and maybe a spear or a flagpole or something.
Yeah.
Perhaps a torch in the other hand.
Yeah.
There is a head on the other side, but you can't see it very clearly. It doesn't have a beard, which makes it quite early in pre-Hadrian.
The discovery of such an early coin is promising. It suggests that the bathhouse must have been built by at least the early 2nd century. But what's really exciting is the discovery of personal items inside the bathhouse.
I've got a stylus. They would be used as writing implements for wax tablets, and when you hold it in your hand, you can feel how they've balanced it, which is really nice.
Not bad for day 2.
Not bad at all.
The Roman lost property provides an intriguing insight into what was going on in the bathhouse and into who was visiting it 2,000 years ago. They're finding a quantity of rings, necklaces and hairpins, suggesting that many of the bathers were women.
So here we have this bone weaving tablet that would have been used
to separate the threads while they were weaving, almost complete. So whether this is specifically a ladies' area, if we're finding the jewellery, the hairpins, the weaving tablets, a rather lovely, lovely find.
As the archaeologists delve deeper, they're beginning to reveal astonishing details of the form and fabric of the bathhouse itself.
The quality of the masonry, the preservation of the blocks and the bricks is absolutely superb. I mean, nowhere else, not even within Silchester, will you get preservation of this quality.
And as the dig reaches its third week, the team hit the water table with astonishing results. Water begins to flow through the drains, just as it would have done 2,000 years ago. With the foundations in such great condition, the team now hopes that they'll be able to answer the real question at the heart of their mission. When was the bathhouse built? Frustratingly, this key fact has eluded them so far. But on the last day, the archaeologists finally find the evidence they need.
It looks like we found what we were hoping for from this excavation, and that is a Nero-stamped tile. When we use these tracings from existing tiles that we have, the circle fits exactly with the inner and the outer circles, so it's exactly the right dimensions to be a Nero tile.
The stamp dates the tile securely to the time of the Emperor Nero's reign, and this is much earlier than expected. I've invited dig director Mike into the lab to discuss the significance of this surprise.
Mike, you've re-excavated this bathhouse, but what you've done is found this really important bit of dating evidence that you've actually got a Nero tile associated with the bathhouse for the first time.
Yes, that's right. And this is the only place in Britain where we have these tiles.
So with Nero's name, what date does that give us?
Well, it must be sometime after 54. Nero became emperor in 54. The initial invasion began in 43. So sometime, you know, within the first 20 years, they're building the baths. And this is one of the earliest mortared masonry, architecturally designed buildings in Roman Britain that survives.
So this is taking what was an Iron Age settlement and totally transforming it. You know, this is now very much a Roman town on Roman plans.
This is, yes, stamping your, if you like, your symbol of Roman civilization, putting a bathhouse on what was a major Iron Age centre, which you can no longer see through that prism of the Roman town plan.
So how does this work as a building, then? You come in here, what are the various rooms?
So, peristyles, so that's you walk, exercise, warm up, then you come in. This is the changing space. And then you run through a different range of rooms, going through warm, tepidarium, to hot, the caldarium.
So this caldarium, this is where you've got the hypercaust underneath, so heated floors.
Heated floors, hot room, the furnace is outside.
So a sauna, effectively.
Yes, yes. And then you'd round it off with the cold plunge back here.
And plenty of women, it seems, coming and using these baths.
Yes, men at the moment largely invisible. But yes, we've got a range of fingerings, of which the pièce de résistance is this gold fingering.
Oh, isn't that lovely? Quite tiny.
Yes, that's for a lady or even conceivably for a child.
Yeah.
And this is another lovely one here, but a different material. This is glass.
Oh, that's just beautiful. So these are little items, you know, personal jewellery, which people have lost at the baths.
Yes, yes. But what they lose in abundance are these hairpins. So
it's just the same today, isn't it? It's hairbands now, I think, at the swimming baths. I'm always losing hairbands at the swimming baths. And these are bone, are they?
They're bone, yes.
Yeah. That's lovely. And do we know who was living there? I mean, is this going to be Roman citizens coming in from the Empire, or is this Brits?
I think predominantly it's Brits. I mean, the town is one of the biggest centres in Britain at the time of the Roman conquest, and a natural centre perhaps to develop.
I mean, it is just extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah, arriving in a new place and going, right, look how lucky you are. We've built you a bathhouse.
Yes, and it's a remarkable story of that early investment in Roman Britain, the confidence of Rome in its newly found province.
Early and rapid investment.
Early and rapid investment, yes.
Discovering this early date for Silchester's bathhouse is fantastic. It's fresh evidence about the determination and speed with which the Roman imperial machine stamped their mark on Britain after the conquest.
When the Romans arrive in Britain, they bring a new culture with them. including characteristic styles of architecture and clothing, pottery and glassware, and, of course, a new language. But there are other, less tangible aspects of Roman culture that also arrived: ideas, stories and myths. And these are beautifully encapsulated in a fantastic artefact here in the museum. Amal, this is such a gorgeous mosaic. How was it discovered?
Well, we didn't know anything about it until 1938, when Herbert Cook, a local farmer, found a sheep dead in his field.
Right.
And he set about burying it. And in that hole, he found a little fragment of a clay tile. So he decided to take it to the museum to get it identified. It wasn't until 1945 that a schoolboy read about the tile, went to see Herbert Cook, and the two of them dug another hole just by chance immediately above the mosaic.
Fantastic. So if it wasn't for the dead sheep and the schoolboy, we wouldn't have this?
We wouldn't, no.
I mean, it's so beautifully preserved, isn't it? And then obviously it got lifted at some point.
Yeah, in 1953, it was quite a big operation to move it, so they stuck fabric to it and rolled it up a bit
so
like a
that's
carpet.
what they're doing here. They're just rolling it out and you can see the pieces of tesserae there. I mean, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous mosaic, and I love the fact that it tells a story.
Yes, and in fact, it's the oldest object in Britain which tells a complete story.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The mosaic illustrates a chapter from one of the greatest Roman myths, written down by the Roman poet Virgil in the 30s BCE. This part focuses on the tragic love story of the legendary hero Aeneas and the Carthaginian queen Dido.
So it starts here. Aeneas is a refugee from his hometown in Troy, which is in modern-day Turkey.
Yeah.
And he's crossing the Mediterranean on his way to Italy, where it's his destiny to found the city of Rome. And his ships get wrecked on the coast of North Africa.
Right.
So it then moves to this central panel at the back.
Yeah.
And that shows Aeneas leaning nonchalantly on his spear.
Yeah.
And
is that Dido?
That's
then?
Dido, yeah. And next to him, Aeneas is Cupid, because Venus, who's the third figure along, who's the goddess of love and also Aeneas's mother, has decided that she wants to make Aeneas and Dido fall in love.
Okay.
So she's sent Cupid in to make that happen.
And is it working?
I think it is, yes. He's kind of plucking at her shawl, which in classical art is a sort of flirtatious gesture. So
is it?
Seems like Cupid's already working his magic. So then it moves on to the panel which shows a hunting scene. Got Dido at the back, Aeneas in the middle.
Not wearing any clothes?
No.
He's got boots on.
Yeah. And a big storm happens. So Dido and Aeneas seek shelter in a cave.
Ah, right.
And that's this panel here.
Oh, so the denouement of the story. They seem to be falling in love with each other.
They do, yes. They're embracing and they spend the night together in the cave.
So what does happen at the end of the story then? Dido commits suicide?
She does, yeah. Aeneas decides to leave to get on with his mission to found Rome and set sail without telling Dido. Dido is absolutely distraught and decides that the only option is to kill herself.
It's such a tragic story.
It is, yeah.
But it's fantastic to have this story so beautifully laid out. And you can imagine people in that villa walking around telling the stories you've just done.
Definitely. I think it's about the person who commissioned the mosaic showing off his Roman heritage.
Yeah, yeah. And weaving this Roman story into the decoration of his house.
Definitely, yeah.
Our next dig is taking place in the historic city of Bath, where Wessex archaeology have been given an incredible opportunity. They're digging right in the centre, beneath Bath Abbey, one of Britain's most beautiful historic monuments, brimming with an immensely rich and ancient past.
The current abbey at Bath was largely built in the 16th century on the site of an earlier Norman cathedral, and then it was extensively renovated in the 19th century. But now its structure is under threat. The Victorian heating system desperately needs updating, and the floor is starting to collapse. Well, now there's a £19 million restoration project underway, and that's giving archaeologists a golden opportunity to investigate what lies beneath the floor of the Abbey.
The lucky team from Wessex Archaeology have 2 years to unlock the Abbey's secrets.
Welcome to day one of our dig diary. We're getting our tools together, getting the structures in place for us to be able to go down into the vaults.
Before the construction work happens, the archaeologists have to evaluate every inch of the site, and it's not an easy task.
This is quite a good example of how tricky some of the excavation is, and to work around lots of live services. It's all very cramped in places.
The vaults lie 3.5 metres beneath street level and are crisscrossed with water pipes and cables. And the archaeologists soon discover medieval remains amongst these modern services, proof that the site is going to be highly complicated.
This man would have been absolutely huge, especially for medieval standards. So it's, yeah,
What sort of height are we looking at?
We're looking at, yeah, about 6'5".
6'5"?
Yeah, about twice the size of me.
As well as a medieval burial, the vaults also reveal evidence of Bath's ancient Roman origins.
What we've got is demolished Roman hypocaust, which is basically an underfloor heating system.
Right.
And here we've got lots of tesserae, which would have been the mosaic floor that covered the top of it.
The team is getting plenty of glimpses of Bath's rich historic past underneath the pipes, and they're coming across some unexpected surprises too.
So we've got a really nice curving wall around here. It goes under the foundations here, so it's definitely pretty early. Also, it looks like there might be some wall facing on it, so we think they're probably upstanding walls. And potentially earlier than medieval, because there were the cloisters here, and this should have really been an open space, but there's a big wall here, so
who knows?
This complicated site is throwing up as many questions as answers. And as the team starts work on the floor of the Abbey itself, it soon becomes clear why it needs replacing.
This is a grave. There's a coffin underneath that's collapsed, and it's left a hole above it where all the soil's collapsed down into the coffin.
There are an estimated 9,000 burials beneath the Abbey, and insufficient underpinning explains why the Victorian floor is now collapsing. But 2 metres deeper down, the archaeologists make a completely unexpected discovery.
It's lovely, isn't it? It's Tudor green glaze. We've got an intact medieval floor surface here, decorated with these tiles. We believe this is probably late 13th or 14th century. Got various designs. Over here, we've got the 3 lions and shields, which are the arms of the Plantagenet kings. Over here we have the arms of the de Clare family, which are powerful marching lords, and Caerphilly Castle. Quite incredible that this has survived.
This is a wonderful end to the first year of the Bath Abbey Footprint Project, so I've asked Kai into the studio to discuss these findings.
Oh, God, this is absolutely incredible. We're finding so much. You've got a real kind of microcosm of the whole history of Bath, haven't you? You're digging right back to the Roman layers and then coming through to the Norman and medieval layers.
It goes right through, and so it's really got a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the really curious thing was this curved wall. So do you know what that is now?
Possibly. So app structures, curved walls, tend to occur in 2 places. Either you get them in Roman buildings, and you get them at the east end of churches or chapels.
Yeah.
So we're right next door to the baths, and you can see here there's a whole series of similar-looking structures. So we thought, could it be part of that? But the mortar's different. It's much more similar to the medieval structures. So the next thing we thought is, could it be part of the Norman Cathedral? And the problem is,
that's where it is.
it's here. It's right in the middle of the cloisters, and you shouldn't have any buildings in this position. This should be open space.
So this, in blue on the plan, that's the footprint of the Norman building, and these are the cloisters, and there's your apse.
That's right, yeah. So the other possibility is that it could be part of an earlier church, a late Saxon church.
Oh, really?
Now, we also have a number of Saxon burials in this area, so it could be. We just don't have quite enough to prove it at the moment.
How curious. So there's a phase of demolition in the 16th century when the new abbey is built, and then more demolition and disturbance in the Victorian period.
Yeah, so the east end of the Tudor Abbey had a fan-vaulted stone ceiling, but the nave itself, they built a wooden ceiling there with plaster decoration on it, which we've found evidence of.
Oh, this is some of it, is it?
Yeah, so when the Victorian Restoration happened, they essentially ripped out what they saw as things that didn't match the original design, which included this, and we found dozens and dozens of these little rosettes, amongst other decorated plaster. So it gives us a really good idea of what the ceiling of the Abbey looked like.
So this is Tudor?
Yes.
Yeah. And what about that tile?
So this tile, I believe this is early 15th century, and this coat of arms is the coat of arms of King Edmund, the first King of England, who was incidentally crowned at Bath Abbey. He wouldn't have recognised these arms because it was invented about 300 years after he'd died.
Right.
But the kings of the time thought that he was a king, therefore he needed a coat of arms. So
Yeah.
this is what they created.
I mean, that's just amazing to find those tiles. What about this coin? What's that?
Yeah, so this was a bit of a surprise. This was actually found by the workmen when they were lifting the pews inside the Abbey.
It's got a little devil on it. It says the city of the devil, Civitas Diaboli.
Yeah, and on the other side it's got a date and the name Anholt, which is an island off the coast of Denmark.
It's a recent date, 1973.
Yes.
That's actually the same vintage as me.
So we looked into this a little bit, and the date it describes is when 13 supposedly ritual sites were found on this island.
Yeah.
One of them had a fake shrunken head on it, and people started wondering, is this some kind of cult activity? And shortly after this, these coins started appearing in churches all over Denmark and Sweden. Nobody knew where they were coming from. And then in 2013, it turned out it was all the work of a clerk at the Danish National Gallery, and it was all an elaborate hoax.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? A little devil under the floor in Bath Abbey. Although just halfway through, this dig is already providing rare glimpses of what lies beneath one of our most treasured historic cities. And with a year to go, who knows what other secrets will be uncovered. Next, it's back to Wessex archaeology in Salisbury, where Raksha is with archaeologists who are investigating the remains of an early 19th century pauper's graveyard. And it's becoming clear just how terrible the living conditions were at the time.
Rachel, you were the site director for this excavation. How was the preservation on site?
The preservation on site was really very good. We found organic remains that we wouldn't expect to find.
So what have you got in that dish over there? Because that looks rather curious.
It is, and it's not something that you would expect to find very often. It is a desiccated brain.
That's rather small. Is that just a portion of the brain?
No, this is a complete brain. But this is a brain from a 9 or 10-year-old child.
And is that from this individual?
Yes, it is. We did find quite a large number of children, and this is one of the children that we found.
I can see here that there's green staining around the eyes.
Yes, so this is where coins were placed over the child's eyes. The parents, although they were very likely to have been incredibly poor, cared an awful lot for their children, and one of the ways they've shown that is by placing the coins on the eyes. Coins they could probably very ill afford.
And you have another child skeleton here.
Yes, we do, and this was probably the most poignant find we had from the entire site. This was an individual that still had a legible nameplate as we uncovered it. So we could decipher part of the legible nameplate, we could decipher the date she died and how old the nameplate said she was. Next to you, you'll see a photograph, and this was her nameplate. She was called Jane Clara J, and she died aged 1 year. We've been able to find her baptism certificates and her death certificates.
Do we know very much about her?
We know a little bit. We know that she was 22 months when she passed away. Her father was a labourer called George, and she lived in the Nine Elms area of Battersea.
And by studying her skeleton, can you tell how she died?
The bones tell us that it was probably some sort of chronic or severe infection that killed her.
So is infant mortality high?
Infant mortality is extremely high. In the streets surrounding this site, the infant mortality is 25% on average for this period. There's an awful lot of industrialisation within the Battersea area, so you're getting chemical factories, acid factories, some really nasty stuff, and it's quite grim living conditions for these people.
So this is very commonplace, it's literally survival of the fittest.
It's survival of the fittest and the luckiest. There were a lot of diseases like cholera, typhoid, but if you were fortunate enough you might make it to adulthood, and if you were unfortunate or unwell you would end up as poor Jane Clara J did, within the cemetery.
Our final dig takes us to the ancient monument of Barrow Clump on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, where archaeologists are investigating a cache of richly furnished burials. Barrow Clump is a 3,000-year-old Bronze Age burial mound, a barrow lying just 5 miles west of Stonehenge. It's such a big feature in the landscape that 1,500 years later, the Anglo-Saxons chose to bury their dead here too. But now this site is potentially in danger of destruction. Archaeological sites can be threatened by anything from the construction of new roads and railways to coastal erosion. But at our next site, Barrow Clump, the problem was a little more unusual. Salisbury Plain is an MOD training ground, and military vehicles continually thunder by during manoeuvres. To assess whether this has caused any damage, a familiar face, MOD archaeologist Richard Osgood, is investigating with his team of ex-soldiers.
Morning one at Barrow Clump, summer 2018, stripping an area underneath the tracks to see the effective ground pressure of vehicles on the Saxon cemetery that lies below.
Only digging will reveal the true extent of this cemetery. That is, if the precious evidence hasn't been destroyed by the tanks. But the initial signs are promising.
Morning 3 on Barrow Clump, and the graves are emerging. There's an area of burning which has got human bone on top of it, and next to that there's another complete grave.
But as they dig down, the team's confidence about the level of preservation is shaken.
Through the skull.
Yeah.
I believe this could be the shoulder, arm, pelvis, and then legs.
Okay, so it's looking a bit friable. The bones look a bit delicate. Is that right at the moment?
The skulls, as you can see,
yeah, it's squashed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Part of the skull there, so it's actually broken.
Okay.
The level of survival is disappointing, and for the next few days, things don't improve. But on day 4...
We have a square-headed brooch here, which probably comes in a pair, and further down the trench, there's a little bit of green coming out there.
Brooches like this are often found in graves of wealthy Anglo-Saxon women. The discovery is a welcome sign that further valuable evidence might survive. And as other burials are uncovered, the team finds grave goods often associated with male burials.
We found the grave cut that goes all the way around towards a really nice shield boss.
That's a really good nick, isn't it?
It's lovely, yeah, it's really nice.
The boss is the metal centrepiece to a wooden shield that is entirely rotted away. Anglo-Saxon men were often buried with shields laid over them. And there are more metal artefacts clearly hidden beneath the ground.
Getting a strong iron signal dead centre of the small pit there, so slowly go down.
Every bleep of the metal detector increases the anticipation on site. And on the final day, the team uncovers what for them is the most exciting find of the entire dig.
Well, what you got?
Seem to have a sword.
That's really cool. You can see the hilt, and there's the bones, there's the arm, the humerus.
And after hours of careful excavation, the incredible preservation of this rare object is apparent.
So that's the end of the year at Barrow Clump. We've had 27 graves, and probably the most spectacular being the individual buried in the grave in front of me with his sword and all the grave fittings. A really, really astonishing sight. But this must be the most spectacular we've had so far.
I've invited Richard into the studio with that sword to discuss all of the finds from Barrow Clump this year. It's quite incredible to think that this man, he's right underneath the tank tracks.
That's right. We were looking this year just to see how damaging our military vehicles were. The answer is actually it's not doing a huge amount of damage. And yes, this was quite a spectacular find in the last week of the dig.
You seem quite excited to find the sword at the end.
If you're digging with a military team, they all want to find weaponry. And what could be more perfect than something as wonderful as this, really?
Yeah.
It's in pretty good condition. It has the scabbard mouth there, made of bronze, possibly a horn handle to it. And then to find this with what the soldiers perceived as a warrior, is quite something. He had a spear, he had a ring-headed pin, and gloriously he had tweezers as well.
So these are tweezers?
Yeah, some iron tweezers. And we found little bronze tweezers with female burials before, but it was good to see that he too had a part of a toilet set with him, a part of his grooming.
Yeah, he would have looked after himself.
Yeah, absolutely so.
And of course, just because you've found weaponry, a magnificent sword and a spear, you can't assume that this is a male burial. But I think this time, I mean, it's very obvious, isn't it? These are very long bones, large joints. Looking at the jaw, that's an incredibly robust jawline there.
Well, that's very masculine then.
Yeah.
In this case, they do seem to be quite gender-specific on our site, and the burials with jewellery are of females and the weaponry are of males. So that's what we've got at Barrow Clump.
So you have got quite a few female burials, and these are some of the beads from those then?
Yes, these are just one collection of grave goods from a female burial, but
From one burial?
From one burial, yes. They all come. They're absolutely stunning, aren't they? With the iridescent blues and the orange ambers and the glass. Really, really exquisite items.
Really lovely.
And you've got soldiers arguing who's got the prettier jewels in the grave they're digging. It's not something they'd probably have expected in the mess 10 years before. And really excitingly with this one was this little brooch, because this is a one-off from a grave in Britain. This is Visigothic. The Visigoths, a group that's moved from Germany to northern Spain or southern France, and it gives us all those sort of questions as to whether the individual was accompanied with these things, whether she was in fact from that region or whether she's a British woman that's adopted fashions of another grouping.
I think identity is really difficult in this period, well, any period actually, because she might have had some Visigoth ancestry whilst growing up in this country. We
Completely
can't
that,
tell
and we've had Roman brooches as well, so that also asks the questions whether these are heirlooms or whether they've just been found on Salisbury Plain, which is always a possibility given the amount of archaeology there.
Yeah, and do we know where these people lived? I mean, is there a settlement nearby?
Good Saxon place names of Ablington and Fildene, which is just below it on the River Avon, both mentioned in the Domesday Book. I think that probably is where they're living, just down the hill.
And then presumably choosing to site their cemetery further up the hill where there are Bronze Age barrows up there.
I think it's that continuity of landscape, isn't it? People are using that landscape as a venerated spot. They're looking up onto the hillside. And I do think that these places were significant in the Saxon period with the knowledge that they were where ancestors, for want of a better word, were placed in prehistory.
Each and every dig reveals how archaeology can shed new light on the story of Britain. From discovering why HMS Invincible transformed British sea power in the 18th century, to revealing the horrific realities of life and death for London's poor 150 years ago. Our ancestors made the country we live in today, and through archaeology we've been able to reach back through the centuries and touch their lives. We might be a small island, but we've got an epic history. And there's a wealth of untold secrets still to uncover. So every year, hundreds of archaeologists dig, dive, and sift to find clues.
Absolutely never seen anything like it before.
It's
amazing.
In 2018, their discoveries have been more exciting than ever.
Look at that.
So that's from a tank then? That's brilliant. That's a nice find.
Not bad for day 2.
Not bad at all.
Each excavation has been filmed as it happened by the archaeologists themselves. Their dig diaries mean that we can be there for every exciting moment of discovery.
And imagine him looking over his shoulder, trying to get away from the enemy aircraft through that.
I'll be in the lab where the teams will bring in their finds from pottery and metalwork to human remains, and we'll take a closer look to find out what these new digs can tell us about our ancestors. Look at that!
Be very careful.
I will be careful. Oh my goodness.
While archaeologist Raksha Dave looks into the analysis that goes on long after a dig is finished.
Somebody stabbed her in the back of the head. What an awful way to go.
Welcome to Digging for Britain. In this programme, I'm joining archaeologists in the east of Britain and beyond as they share their biggest discoveries. We join a team as they find an incredible lost Stone Age monument.
It has to mean something, and it's now our job is to figure out what it does mean.
And we uncover an unusual Roman burial site that seems to defy explanation.
This is actually the 17th out of 32 which show deviancy in the form of decapitation.
And at Norwich Castle Museum, I'll discover how one of the objects held here helps us to tell the story of Eastern Britain. First, we travel a bit further east than usual to investigate the key World War I battle of Bullecourt in a French foreign field that is forever England. By 1917, a devastating land war had been raging in Europe for 3 years. That spring, Germany made the strategic decision to retreat behind a massive fortified defence they'd constructed across northern France. It was known to the British as the Hindenburg Line. The line was almost impenetrable with a set of 6 trenches, and in front of that another 90 metres of barbed wire. The Allies had to breach it, though, or face the terrible prospect of an even longer war. So the British decided to try out their latest, barely tested invention, the tank. The plan at Bullecourt was straightforward. 12 British tanks would advance to the Hindenburg Line, crash through the defences, followed by troops of Australian infantry. But in the end, it was a disaster. Only 2 tanks got anywhere near the line, leading to a catastrophic loss of Australian life. The Australians felt badly betrayed, and one general even accused the tank crews of cowardice. MOD archaeologist Richard Osgood is leading this battlefield dig.
What we're looking for is the points where the tanks of the British Army attacked in 1917, and to find out why they were destroyed where they were, to answer the question that was levelled at some of the crews that they perhaps lacked moral fibre, maybe there's an element of cowardice in some ways, not helping to assist the Australian infantry in their attack on the German Hindenburg Line.
The team have an idea where they might find one of these tanks, because the Germans took photographs of it after their victory. Richard's archaeologists are ex-soldiers from Britain, Australia, and Germany.
Well, the edge of the trench is about here, so it has a little slope in it.
They've served in recent conflicts from Afghanistan to Iraq, giving them an insight into war's worst realities. And it doesn't take long before they find evidence of the Hindenburg Line's brutal design.
What we appear to have here, German barbed wire. You can see it's really thick, it's well over-engineered, pretty nasty stuff. You'll certainly get tangled up in that and be shot, no doubt.
And then Richard's team are brought face to face with the tragic consequences of this battle for Bullecourt. A reminder that there were casualties on both sides.
This chap here is a German casualty lying in the Hindenburg Line. This is his skull. He's facing this way. He seems to be in quite a mess, doesn't he, Isabel? He's kind of twisted this way. The vertebrae suddenly stop there.
They can tell from the equipment around him that he was a German soldier. It's important to these former soldiers to take a moment to remember the fallen.
War is a great leveller. He's a human being. He could be British, he could be Australian, he could be French. In this case, he's German, and it's all exactly the same.
Ja, Highness, Kamerad. This is not easy, but 100 years ago, we might have fought against each other. But because of this war, we're now standing here together. Not as enemies, but as friends. Auf dich, Kamerad.
Fallen comrades.
Fallen comrades.
The next day, the team continue their quest for the tank.
I can't believe we're making so many finds already. We've got lots of tank parts that are coming out of the ground. We've got parts of the engine, we've got parts of the driving chain, we've got some of the components from within the tank as well.
Because of the documentary evidence and photos, Richard knows that he's looking at the remains of Tank 796, commanded by Lieutenant Hugh Skinner. And the only tank that made it all the way to the Hindenburg Line. It broke down in a crater in full view of the German artillery. In the reports of the battle, written by Australian generals, British tank crews were accused of cowardice and incompetence. So is it possible that Skinner and his crew abandoned their Australian allies?
Got some tank armour.
Oh, right, that's part of the plate from the side, is it?
Yes.
Let's have a look. Being in an armoured vehicle with something like this, I mean, is that going to protect you against shell blast?
No, not at all. Protects you against small arms.
So against bullets, good. Bullets. Against shells, that's really not going to work. No. So that's pretty terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
The armour plating was clearly not able to withstand the firepower it faced. With his tank immobilised and under heavy fire, Skinner and his crew would have been sitting ducks, so the last find of the dig is a revelation.
Leave it there, Paul. And that's possibly the end of a shell. Okay.
It's hollow.
Okay, we'll keep cleaning it. That looks a cart case.
I think so.
Cartridge.
It's got curvature.
So in which case we need to get
on it.
Dave over to have a look.
Brush.
That was a £6 kit. Well, that's what the guys have been thinking.
Yeah, that's what it is. £6 kit.
So that's from a tank then?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's a nice find.
This empty casing suggests a £6 tank shell was fired on this very spot. They were firing the remains of their ammo until the bitter end.
When the tank was basically broken down here, in his report he said he carried on firing, trying to use as much of his ammunition up as possible before they retreated to the Australian and British lines over there. And this kind of proves that he was firing from this spot where the tank was broken.
So this item is, yeah, it's a symbol of bravery.
I've asked Richard to join me in the lab to share the powerful evidence he's uncovered to contradict the Australian accusations of cowardice.
This is basically the archaeology of a day. This is the archaeology of one day in April 1917 and the traces it leaves behind in these French fields.
Have you found out anything else that we couldn't have known just from the history that's come down to us?
Yes. I mean, the armour, it's just metal. It's not armoured as we'd understand it. It's that sort of level of thickness. It's really great for stopping bullets, but not for stopping artillery. The crews must have known that very, very quickly, and it must have been just terrifying. So these are the tanks that are brought in for training for the British Army. They've used them on the Somme in 1916, but this is going to be the breakthrough weapon, but they're only for training. I suppose shock and awe is the thing they were trying to achieve, of having this monster attacking the infantry, and that's great if you can't shoot through it.
I mean, it seems extraordinary that you're saying that essentially this is a training tank. I mean, this tank is firing shells of that size, and presumably the Germans are firing back similar size
Pretty
shells.
similar. This is a 6-pounder case, and the Germans are firing back 7.7 centimetre artillery, which is pretty much the same sort of size, and it was going straight through the metal of these tanks.
And what's this image here?
We all think we know what colours the tanks are, and the only way you can really tell what the original paint was like on these things is if you find it in the ground. And we were incredibly fortunate to find that paint on one of the tracks of 796. So you've got two colours there. You've got the red, which is the undercoat, and then a green tone on top of it. That colour is British racing green.
Yeah.
On a thing that does 4 miles an hour.
Does that make them stand out more, do you think?
Well, they've done all sorts of different colour schemes, and they're experimenting. It's such a new weapon. They're even experimenting with the colours that are going on to this thing. People are learning lessons and desperately trying to break through this huge siege that's going on the Western Front.
So the Germans had nothing like this?
No, nothing at all. In fact, the main use of tanks that the Germans have in the First World War are captured British tanks, Beutpanzer. It's a bit of a Pyrrhic victory in some ways, in that the Germans look at the results of the fire that they put out against these tanks and where they've destroyed them and how they've destroyed them, and they employ those tactics later on in other battles. But by then, the British are not using training tanks. They're using properly armoured vehicles.
Right.
And that leads to successes like the Battle of Cambrai just a few months later, where there are much more effective vehicles.
And what about this tale of cowardice, then? I mean, where does this excavation leave us?
Well, hopefully that's dispelled any sorts of thoughts like that. It comes from the Australians, who took a lot of casualties in this one particular battle, perhaps looking for a scapegoat, and these tank crews were that obvious example to pin it on. The fact that this tank got as far as it did, it fired until its ammunition was either expended or the tank was utterly unable to maintain itself without being destroyed. It does 4 miles an hour over a big area. They've seen the other tanks being destroyed. To stay as long as they did and to get as far as they did, I think actually it's quite the reverse. I think it's a tale of courage.
Yeah. This excavation shows that the tragic failure at Bullecourt was a failure of machines and not men. We now know that the crew of Tank 796 fought bravely until their very last shell. We go back to the UK now, where archaeologists are investigating a huge 37-kilometre-long stretch of farmland before the laying of a power line near Woodbridge. Every time a major UK building project is greenlit, then maps have to be consulted, the land is surveyed, and often an excavation is carried out. Now, the archaeologists don't set out to make spectacular finds, but sometimes they will uncover a major new discovery, and that's exactly what happened this year in Suffolk. The Suffolk landscape has been ploughed and levelled for centuries. So when the commercial archaeologists started work, expectations were low. But right at the end of the project, the survey showed something interesting hidden under the soil. When they start to dig, they get a huge surprise. It looks like this very flat patch of land was once a hill, and under the flattened hill, they uncover a monumental curving ditch.
The scale of the ditch is massive. It's about 15 metres wide. It's at least 2 to 3 metres deep. That is a very, very large feature, which would have been huge in the landscape when it was around.
Digging this ditch must have been a colossal undertaking, suggesting that this was a very important site. Through the bitterly cold winter, the team works as fast and as carefully as they can, peeling back each layer of earth filling the ditch. Then comes the next shock. There's a perfectly preserved wooden trackway inside the ditch that would have led to the top of the hill.
The trackway itself came down on a ramp just beside us on split oak timbers, and then runs up along the centre of the ring ditch and terminates at the very highest point on the hill.
With no precedent for such a strange design, the team don't know if they're looking at something that is hundreds or thousands of years old. But it's clear that they've unearthed an enormous monument and something that had been entirely forgotten about. As the trackway emerges, the archaeologists can see that it's about 3 metres wide, and further analysis reveals it's made of birch and oak. The big question is now when this mysterious monument was constructed and why. And they start to find objects that appear to have been deliberately placed in the ditch.
There's an obvious placing of certain bones in certain locations along the trackway, but we're finding none of the other bones. We're only finding pelvic bones and jaw bones, which is sort of the front of the animal and the back of the animal, but nothing in between. And that in itself is extraordinarily unusual.
The wood and the bone can be dated, and they turn out to be very old indeed. They're from 2400 BCE, so this feature is Stone Age. At this time, we know that people were gathering to create giant monuments in significant places in the landscape. The most famous of these, of course, is Stonehenge, which also has a large curving ditch around it. But there the similarities end. This new discovery, though, raises the possibility that many more giant monuments could be hidden in our landscape, each one unique and each with its own purpose. This henge-like monument has one last important secret. The team finds a large platform at the top of the hill, built to hold the weight of many people.
So we're standing on the highest point on the hillside where the ring ditch occurs, and you can see behind us the remains of the supporting structure for the depositional platform.
And not only that, there are natural springs on site that seem to have been redirected to fill the ditch with water. The wooden trackway and platform would have allowed people to walk over the water, and it seems that they were deliberately dropping objects like the animal bone into it. This is an extraordinary, unique and puzzling feat of ancient engineering.
We think that it's part of the actual ceremonial purpose of the platform, is that people come to the top of it and they deposit material to run down along the hillside in the flowing water.
It is difficult to think of a functional reason for building a structure like this, and the archaeologists believe it had a ritual purpose.
That makes this an almost magical experience, and if you're coming in from the creek below, the water will be rushing down on either side like a large prehistoric water feature.
For site director Vinny, this is the find of a lifetime.
It has been a phenomenal site, once in a career site for me, and I think for everybody here, they've witnessed nothing of the likes of what we've excavated over the last 7 months. It's been a real roller coaster.
I've asked the team into the lab to explain how this remarkable site is changing our knowledge of the ritual landscape of prehistoric Britain. That is an incredible site. And is it a henge? Can we describe it as that?
I think it's certainly related to those sorts of things. Henges, we now know, relate to water and the use of water and presumably the veneration of the ancestors and the journey to the afterlife. It's quite possible that people had their feet in the water when they were walking along the trackway. It's not a place where they were living and it's not an occupation site. It's a site with a special function.
So, yeah, this is the elephant in the room. we've been kind of ignoring this, but it's absolutely magnificent. So this is a prehistoric cow.
A very large prehistoric cow.
Yeah. I mean, it's
a very large
absolutely-
one that we were very pleased to see.
Yeah.
Because it allowed us to have an indication of what date we were dealing with, because when you find an aurochs, it tells you that whatever you've got, it's Middle Bronze Age or earlier,
Yeah.
because they are extinct in Britain as of the Middle Bronze Age.
And where did you find it?
So we found this just off the end of the platform, just within arm's reach, so it's deposited off the side. And along with that, we found this wooden bladed agricultural artifact as well.
So it's not just a piece of wood?
No, it's a wooden spatula, and it's used for butter and milk churning. It's the same thing. You're getting the association of agricultural practices with the auroch skull in the placement at the edge of this platform.
I mean, these are the earliest farmers, aren't they? This is early Neolithic. This is the beginning of farming in Britain.
From the carbon-14 dating that we've just recently had back, we're looking at it to be about 3,500 BC.
So that's really early Neolithic.
Very early, and that's from the lowest phase of the trackway, so the very first phase of trackway.
And when we're thinking of this time period, we're always kind of drawn to Stonehenge, just because that is such an obvious feature still in our landscape. But it's quite curious to see that there were things like this that have been forgotten about.
Stonehenge is famous for its kind of lifespan. Now, what we can tell from this site in particular is that it has a similar lifespan. Outside of our site, from the surveying that we've done also, we can see there's a much larger sequence of monumental activity in that whole valley side, which is prehistoric. It's something that those people and their descendants have kept coming back to for thousands of years.
This astonishing site reveals that our prehistoric ancestors came together to build a spectacular water feature and returned here over more than 1,000 years. But unlike Stonehenge, this monument was flattened and lost until now. It's still early days, but the Woodbridge site looks set to become the stuff of archaeological legend. We cover many exciting digs on this series, but in fact, the excavation is only the start of a long journey of discovery. Once finds and samples are retrieved, they're sent off to labs for conservation and analysis, a process that can take weeks, months, sometimes even years. And for this next dig in Chichester, it is only when the samples arrive in the lab that the real details begin to emerge. Field archaeologist Raksha Dave is travelling to Portslade to find out how post-excavation work following a Chichester dig is making sense of Britain's lost landscapes.
For the last 2 years, Southern Water have been laying a 10-kilometre pipeline cutting through town and country, and they paid Archaeology South East to monitor their work. As they dug the areas where the pipes were to be laid, they found prehistoric henges, Roman settlement and burial, and RAF bases from World War II. But most intriguingly, they have unearthed a buried medieval village.
There are an awful lot of buckets here.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So these are just some of the hundreds of samples that we've recovered from the village itself. They are soil, basically, from archaeological deposits, like, for example, fills of ditches and pits.
So you've got a plan here.
As they excavated along the line of the future water pipe and uncovered the footprint of the lost village, they mapped the details.
So you can see there's boundary ditches, there's post holes relating to structures.
To access this time capsule of medieval life, they've dug up entire sections of the ground and brought them back to the lab. The clues to the people who lived in this village are hidden in the soil. But first, they need to get rid of a lot of mud.
Good grief. Then do I just break these bits up then?
Yeah, so all we're trying to do is break it down. The water will do some of the work for us.
This is quite a bizarre job.
It is.
It's like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I wash mud.
It's almost like massaging it, though, so it's very intimate. What we're trying to do is get rid of all the soil, so we end up with all the lovely archaeological material.
I can actually feel all the tiny bits.
Yeah. And this one, on top of this mesh, will have all the heavy stuff that won't float, but then some lighter things like charcoal and plant remains will float, and we'll end up with them in this smaller one.
The large tank at the top will catch stone, tile and metal, and the small mesh below it catches lighter plant remains.
So how do you then use all of this information about this organic remains to paint a picture of village life?
If, for example, we have a sample with lots of charcoal in it, it could be from an oven or a kiln. We can identify certain types of charcoal as being fuel wood.
Yeah, so you can see where they're selecting certain types of trees to burn, or if they're avoiding any, whether they're cutting down trees to use as fuel, or whether they are just picking from the forest floor.
It just amazes me that how much information you can get from such a tiny piece of charcoal.
Extracting all of this information requires an expert eye, so they are passed to archaeobotanist Angela for analysis.
Gosh, this is quite painstaking stuff.
And then I listen to music when I do.
These innocuous bits of seed and charcoal can give us an intimate insight into the everyday lives of the people in this village. Germinated grains showed that they were brewing ale. The charcoal shows us where they were cooking, and the cereal can tell us about the bread they were eating.
In medieval times, both wheat and barley were used for making flour because wheat was a bit of a high-status cereal, so not everybody could afford to eat bread that was made entirely out of wheat.
After all of these samples are sorted and analysed, the team will be able to work out what people were doing in different parts of the site. And the larger finds from the excavation are providing intriguing clues to the village's fate.
Where has this material come from?
Well, all of this tile has come from a spread that was overlying one side of the best preserved house that we had on the site.
We know that there are 2,000 fragments of tile here weighing close to 40 kilograms, and that's a significantly large amount to get from a single feature.
Tile was a valuable resource and often reused. Such a large quantity left untouched after the building's collapse suggests that the entire village was abandoned.
So it's literally collapsed down and all the tiles just spread onto the ground?
Where it drops, yeah.
The fabric of this particular tile is quite distinctive. You can see it's got quite large flint inclusions. And we can say that it's between 1150 and 1350 AD.
This medieval date gives an important clue as to why this village disappeared.
But that's a classic feature of the deserted medieval village in the mid-14th century, where you just get, obviously, massive depopulation. You're going through a cold phase that hits around that time, the so-called Little Ice Age. That has a knock-on effect with, like, an impact on food, on harvests. You've got the Black Death rolls in around that time. You've got the 100 Years' War as well, which would have been a drain on the population. When you combine them all together, it must have been pretty devastating.
The date of this collapsed building shows that the perfect storm of climate change, disease, and political turmoil signalled the end for this particular village. It's early days, but it's likely these buckets of mud hold many more of the village's secrets for the archaeologists to uncover.
Our next site takes us to the village of Great Wellnotham in Suffolk, where a team were brought in to investigate a small field ahead of a housing project, because evidence of Roman activity had already been found in the surrounding area. This dig is making us question Roman burial practice in Britain.
When it comes to the Romans, a fort or a villa looks very similar whether it's in northern Africa or eastern Britain. So archaeologists often half know what they're going to find even before they start digging. But some sites defy all the expectations.
When the team arrived on site, they found evidence of burials. There's nothing unusual about this, but it meant the site had to be fully excavated. 5 weeks in, they make what seems to be a gruesome discovery.
So I've got a child between about 4 and 8 years old. And he's what we call a deviant burial, which means it's been placed in an unusual way or buried in an unusual practice. You can see the head has been removed from where it should be and is in between the legs. So we've got the arms coming down like this, the 2 legs on either side which are spread, and the head right in the middle.
There are examples of strange burials like this, decapitated with the head rearranged, from other Roman cemeteries, but they're rare, and we don't know why the dead body would be treated in this way. As the dig continues, there are plenty of more normal-looking graves, so it looks like the deviant burial is a one-off. But it isn't.
So far, I'm uncovering this grave where we have this skeleton, possibly deviant. We're not entirely sure yet if the skull belongs to the skeleton, but I believe it could be from this skeleton because by the pelvis and by the skull, it seems to be female.
This burial is even stranger than the last.
We also have feet, but they do not belong to this skeleton, so it's obvious that we have several redeposits on the same grave.
This body appears to have been buried with an extra pair of feet, which must have been removed from their owner, fully fleshed. Over the next few days, more deviant burials emerge.
We're missing the top vertebrae from over here, so it's very likely that this skull does belong to this individual, and we've got clear evidence of decapitation having occurred on site, so we've got yet another deviant burial.
We have another presumed decapitation where the head has been placed underneath the lower limbs.
And we have Brunner excavating our 17th decapitation burial. This is actually the 17th out of 32 which show deviancy in the form of decapitation, with the head out of its correct anatomical position.
Well over half of the people buried in this cemetery have been decapitated, and even more peculiarly, several have extra body parts with them. This is a large number of deviant burials for a single cemetery. So what does it mean? I've asked Rebecca Redfern from the Museum of London and lead archaeologist Kerry Bull into the lab to help solve this mystery.
I suppose what's absolutely crucial to understand about this, we talk about decapitation, but what we need to try to understand is whether that is somebody being beheaded as the cause of their death, or whether actually they're already dead and you're removing the head of a dead body?
I think in this case, with this particular woman, I think we're fitting more of a funerary ritual rather than as an execution. I mean, the cemetery is very strange.
Yeah,
So
I mean, what we do seem to have all of the decapitation burials, they have purposely moved the head from anatomical position, and they tend to have it in the lower limb area, so it seemed to have been important to them to remove that head and put them somewhere else, whereas normally with some sort of execution burials, all you need to do is chop off the head and kill them.
I mean, I think this is obviously part of a culture where if this is happening after death, this is just what you do with a dead body, and it's kind of assumed in the same way that, you know, what we do with dead bodies now is cremate them, grind them up and put them in a pot. And there's not necessarily thought going into that process every time. But where do you think it comes from? What's the motivation?
it's really interesting because a lot of the time, a lot of the decapitation or even prone burials, so people are buried face down or in unusual positions, they're covered with stones. And so we think that is like definitely we are making sure you never come back.
So can you tell anything about this other individual here?
I mean, this lady appears to have experienced quite a physical lifestyle. If we look at her elbow joint, it's very shiny. So it's lovely and shiny,
Look like ivory, doesn't it? So she's lost all the cartilage there.
Yeah, in her elbow and then again in her wrist at the bottom of the ulna.
Yeah.
And then her finger phalanges, one appears to be broken and one appears to be infected. And there seems to be a little bit of joint disease as well in her skeleton, and all of the maxillary teeth have been lost for quite a long time because it's all pinched back together, and it's made her face look very kind of caved in. It's not something that I would really expect to see because she doesn't appear to be that old.
Do we have any idea who these people might have been? You know, where they stood in Roman society?
There's a site down the road where they've actually found a slave manacle of around about the same period. And so maybe we could have a funerary rite associated with slave burials. And that's why we're getting a lot of this degenerative bone disease, reflecting that kind of lifestyle.
Do you think that's a reasonable hypothesis?
I think so. For the Romans to really kind of get the rural economy going, they have to import a huge number of people, both from the continent, but also they're moving people around Britain and they're enslaved.
And that's really interesting too, because when we look at Roman Britain, we're often talking about the civilised nature of it. But here we've got something that prefigures medieval serfdom.
Oh, absolutely. We know one of the big exports in the late Iron Age are slaves from Britain. So the Romans just really ramp that part of the economy up. And also the fact that anyone could be a slave. You get people who may not show us that they've suffered a hard childhood because they might have had a fairly affluent life but then become enslaved as adults. And that's what we're seeing. So it's very, very complicated. But for me, for the research that I've done, I would say this is very convincing.
That this is a slave cemetery?
Yes.
We still don't really understand why these bodies were decapitated. But by identifying these people as slaves, the cemetery could help to shed light on that darker side of Roman rule. Now we travel forward in time 1,200 years to Hampshire and a chance discovery of a stash of coins that might throw some light on one of the most turbulent periods in our British history. In April 2018, Canadian metal detectorist Darcy Fear was holidaying in Hampshire. Back home, he'd been passionate about his hobby for decades, even though he'd had little success.
Thursday morning, it was a beautiful day. I started metal detecting, and it was my first signal. I was only there 10, 15 minutes. And I was just so amazed that I found something so incredible.
Darcy's holiday was about to become the archaeological experience of a lifetime.
When I dug the top of the soil, and then I saw the first bit of pottery on the ground. Well, then the last shovelful, when we lifted it out, it was just coins everywhere. So it was, we knew what we had then, or I did anyway, so yeah.
Incredibly, having just arrived in the UK, Darcy had discovered a hoard of buried coins. All the visible ones were nearly 400 years old. They'd probably been hidden here in the Civil War.
During the English Civil War, the country was split, torn apart by fighting between Charles I's Royalists and Cromwell's Roundheads. But while the history books can provide us with details of the battles and the bloodsheds, the names of leaders even,
Archaeology reveals the details of ordinary lives. Although on foreign turf, Darcy knew exactly what he should do when he made his discovery.
I know the rules, so we're not supposed to touch anything once you find a hoard. So we didn't until we got a hold of an archaeologist. By the end of the day, they finally let us dig it ourselves.
Having sought permission and then with careful supervision, the hoard was lifted.
Then we put the whole thing into a bucket to keep it together and then cover it with a wet rag. And then, you know, the bucket alone weighed 100 pounds, just with mostly dirt.
By taking such care, Darcy and the archaeologists hope that they've removed the entire hoard in a single block. And then the conservation team at the British Museum take over.
Very quickly after I started excavating, I started seeing the rim of the vessel, which was very lucky because then I realized this is what I was working with.
The pot looks to be intact, meaning that it could be just as its owner had placed it there 400 years ago. So Dugu begins to work very slowly and methodically.
This is really a micro-excavation, so if I was on site, excavating your find, this is exactly I would be doing it, yeah.
Dugu carries out this mini dig with almost surgical skill, and she notices something remarkable about the way the coins were placed inside the pot.
It looks like in this layer that I've been excavating, the coins are stuck next to each other and upwards.
It's hard to believe, really, you know, to find something like this.
Senior conservator Pippa Pearce thinks that the owner of the hoard had sorted the money into neat little stacks, someone who clearly intended to come back to them.
Because that would mean that they were in a hurry, they weren't about to be murdered, they weren't counting their money out neatly and then just putting it into a pot and hiding it.
And the stacks of silver coins just keep on coming.
So we've got 23 coins out at the moment. You reckon there's as many again or more?
I think there's 200 coins in there.
Whoa!
The coins are in great condition despite being in the ground for so long.
So you can see his beard.
These ones are in nice
Yes,
shape. You see
very
you
little
can
corrosion.
See
yeah.
the dates on those ones as plain as day. Amazing.
So to have what is a really good condition hoard and to be able to excavate it in the lab is just brilliant for us.
So why did this person bury their wealth? I'm speaking to British Museum coin expert Barry Cook to find out more about this incredible hoard.
So we've got Edward VI all the way through Elizabeth, James, through to Charles. What's the time depth there?
We have 100 years, pretty much, of English monarchy.
Yeah.
We could have had older coins, except that Henry VIII debased the coinage and left it in a terrible state. So it was up to his children, Edward VI, Mary and Elizabeth, to try and sort that out. Edward and Mary both issued good silver coins, but they didn't get rid of the terrible stuff. Elizabeth came in and got rid of all the bad money.
Yeah.
So Civil War hoards, the oldest coin will often be an Edward VI or a Mary coin.
Yeah. I mean, it seems quite extraordinary to us today, I think, to imagine that people were still using coins that were 100 years old and they were still,
Yes, you're too
they were
young.
still
You're
currency.
too young. I can remember Edward VII coins when I was young, with pre-decimalisation.
Yeah.
The coins didn't change. And you don't withdraw the coins because the ruler died, you keep them there.
So, who else have we got?
James I. There are some coins that have dates on, but most coins of this period do not have dates on.
Oh,
but the mint organised its production by putting a little mark on, so we can date those.
And then finally...
Charles, this is a nice shilling of Charles. He's telling us this shilling. It says 12 for 12 pence.
Yeah, so he's the last one.
He's the latest one in the hoard, and the hoard ends with a lot of coins of his from one particular mint mark, which is called triangle and circle, because obviously it's a triangle inside a circle. And that was the mark that was being used between 1641 and 1643.
Right.
And that's really important, because in 1642, the King leaves London, the Civil War starts.
Yeah.
So this is the coin issue being produced as the Civil War is just beginning.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of coin hoards that end at this time, so everyone is hiding their money.
And is there anything else unusual about this? I mean, the scratching out of faces seems to be quite odd. Is that something we often see?
Yes, to a degree. It's not every hoard has got these scratches, but enough of them do for it to be a serious phenomenon of the period.
Yeah.
We don't really understand why they did it. And this hoard is typical in the sense that most of the scratch coins are shillings, and most of the scratch coins are Elizabeth. So if you would imagine if there was a political motive during the Civil War of scratching the king's face out, it's going to be Charles, it's not Elizabeth. Elizabeth was viewed as in a more positive light. She was the comparison against which the Stuarts failed.
Yeah. So what is the explanation for these scratches then?
I'm inclined to think there is some sort of practical explanation. You might just be keeping track. You might be accounting them. It might be the top one in the pile. It could be something like that. Who knows?
So with a coin hoard like this, sometimes with earlier coin hoards, we're left wondering whether perhaps they're votive offerings or people burying their wealth at this point.
This is pure hiding your economic wealth and hoping to come back to it.
Yeah.
We're in the point where England is collapsing, disintegrating, and people are hiding their coins, hiding everything they can get and putting it in the ground. And generally speaking, the hoards are found across the country where the two sides are meeting.
Right.
They sort of sweep down into Down Yorkshire and through the Midlands and where the King's headquarters was into the West Country where the two armies were always meeting. They do reflect how the war was working.
They reflect that clash.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the wealth that was buried here, can you give me an equivalent?
It's £13, 4 shillings and sixpence.
Yeah, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but how much was it then?
But that's very easily an annual salary of a worker.
Yeah. They
used to say that Elizabethan gentlemen should be able to live off £10 a year.
Right.
We're a bit later now, but you know, £13 is a good income for pretty much anyone who wasn't a gentleman or a really rich trader.
Yeah. So in that pot, we've got a small fortune.
Yes, so we have somebody's annual wages.
Yeah. And they never came back to retrieve it.
Something happened.
Next, we travel to Coldingham, right at the English-Scottish border, in pursuit of a powerful but forgotten Anglo-Saxon princess. This site lies just across the water from the famous Lindisfarne Abbey. Lindisfarne was founded by King Oswald, who is still famous today for transforming Britain into a Christian country. But the role his sister played has often been overlooked. Rejecting the traditional option of marriage, Princess Eba became an abbess and played a crucial part in the spread of this religion. But the precise location of her monastery has proved elusive. A team of archaeologists and volunteers from Dig Ventures is hoping to put Eba back into the story of how Christianity spread.
So hold something on this side. Yeah.
So we're here at Coldingham looking for St Eba's Monastery, an Anglo-Saxon double monastery that we think was somewhere around the location.
The abbey that Eba established would have acted as a vital link between the evangelical monks of Lindisfarne and the people on the mainland they needed to reach. The hunt starts near a later Norman priory, often placed on the site of an older abbey. But the remains of these Saxon abbeys are incredibly elusive. There are often no stone buildings to find, so even discovering the site of a chapel can be difficult. But there usually is a marked boundary.
We started to clean back along this trench, and what's really exciting is we started to find some archaeological features. What we think we found is a ditch which is similar to the 7th century ditch found in earlier excavations.
A ditch dating to the 7th century was found in a nearby field 13 years ago. And if this new ditch connects to that one, it could suggest that they're on the very edge of the monastery site. The team have just 12 more days to find solid evidence. But with a good start like this, they're feeling confident.
Might be a tiny bit of tile or something.
But then some surprising material begins to emerge.
Bones coming out of everywhere. This whole layer is full of it.
These are animal bones.
We are halfway through week 2 and we have loads and loads of animal bone, which makes me desperate and happy at the same time. Happy because it's really exciting, but desperate because we only have 4 days to clean it all.
While heaps of animal bones might not be the evidence the team was expecting, it is interesting. The quantity of animal bones suggests that something more than just the consumption of meat was happening here.
We might have a tannery here making leather, glue, tallow for candles. There's all sorts of things they'd have been using animals for.
The bones and the boundary ditch won't reveal their secrets until long after this short dig is over and dating work can be done. But it's a promising start to an archaeological quest to give Eba the recognition she deserves. Even when women held positions of power and were written about in historical texts, they seem to have been selectively forgotten about. 300 miles south in Essex, another team is uncovering the story of another powerful Anglo-Saxon woman. A new shopping centre is planned for the centre of Barking, giving the team from Thames Valley Archaeological Services a chance to dig. And they're on the trail of another elusive monastery. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, the growth and success of a town was often linked to the presence of an economically powerful abbey. And in Barking, that success built on the work of a princess called Ethelberga, who we know founded the first monastery there. Our next dig is providing tantalising evidence of Saxon occupation, industry and trade, which is probably linked to her abbey. They start digging where some Anglo-Saxon buildings were found back in the 80s, and soon they find something promising.
This is day 12 of our excavation at Barking Abbey. We're looking at a Saxon building. Just this morning I'm discovering that it's starting to look like it's a sunken floor building, like a grub hut perhaps, but maybe a grub hut that's used as a church.
A grub hut is a characteristic Anglo-Saxon building with a sunken floor. So they decide to dig down through this pit, hoping they're on the right track.
I found that.
Oh, nice.
Looks like a rusty old bit of barbed wire, doesn't it? But I'm pretty convinced that that's a copper alloy pin, and it's almost as if that's like a little bird or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it's something that goes like in a nun's hair or holds a headdress.
So it's a hairpin.
To a hairpin.
This hairpin might be tiny, but it's a potentially prestigious item that could have been worn by a wealthy Anglo-Saxon woman. Then later that day, Graham's expert eye spots something else.
Oh, wow. Just found a little piece of Saxon period glass coming out of the building that we're calling the chapel. And that's probably from the 8th century.
Wow.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
Archaeologists getting excited about tiny little bits of glass stuff.
There's every reason to be excited. In Anglo-Saxon Britain, glass was a rare luxury. And perhaps not so unexpected here if there was a monastery on this site. The team settle in to comb every inch of this sunken feature because the tiniest piece of evidence could make all the difference. But that afternoon, they find something that tells them far more than they'd ever expected.
We found a piece of Millefiori rod that was on top of a burnt layer.
Oh, that is gorgeous. It really is.
These rods are essentially offcuts from making fine glassware. So this could be powerful evidence that there is a rare Anglo-Saxon glass factory on this site.
We've got evidence of consumption of glassware in the form of glass vessels, but we're now starting to get evidence of production of glasswork in the Saxon period. There's probably less than 5 Saxon period glass production sites in Britain. So to find that really is very exciting.
These finds give us tantalising glimpses of Anglo-Saxon life, but do they confirm the presence of an abbey? The new site director, Kyle, explains more in the lab. We saw some film of uncovering a grub hut, a kind of sunken floored building. Do you think was it a chapel?
Unfortunately, when we got to the bottom of this supposed sunken feature building, we found some plastic lining. So it turned out that this was backfill.
How frustrating.
It was very frustrating.
You do all that digging thinking you're digging into pristine, stratified layers, and then you get down and find out that it's been disturbed.
Yeah, so we found quite a few nice finds in it as well, which suggested at least these soils were part of the monastery.
So what have we got here?
So here we've got the bird head pin.
Oh, yeah.
So this is quite a high status object. And this here we think is the top of an incense burner. So that kind of ties into the idea that there was sort of a religious ceremony going on.
But I think that for me, one of the things that really caught my eye and seems quite important
is that, which is just a bit of leftover glass from making glass, but it's the fact that they were making glass that's so interesting.
Yeah, no, there's definitely evidence to point towards them making glass in the area, and we know that there was supposedly a glassworking facility around the Abbey, but unfortunately we didn't actually find the structure that we're hoping to find.
You know, tantalising glimpses, artefacts that definitely date to the right time period, but as yet Barking Abbey remains a bit elusive. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So they have the right finds at Barking, but no monastery. At Coldingham, it's the opposite. Few finds, but possibly a monastery boundary. I've asked Manda Forster into the lab to explain her findings.
So is this your plan from this year?
Yes, so
can you
these
talk me through it? It's quite complicated.
What we're focusing on here, really, in terms of our Anglo-Saxon monastery and looking for Eba, is this feature here that comes through.
So you think that's the ditch?
Yeah, that is the ditch. And hopefully we'll prove it later. But if you imagine zooming out, where I'm standing, I'm pretty much in the priory grounds.
Yeah. And this is the perimeter.
And this is the perimeter. It's if we could establish that what we do have here is the Valum ditch, and we can start to pull together some more of the evidence that we've seen. If we've got the dates in the right places and we've got small artefacts, these really start to point towards this as being the monastic community for Eba's site.
And actually, it's the ditch that's
ditch,
more interesting.
The small ditch that was really quietly empty, but with environmental deposits. And that's the thing. I mean, what you don't always get on an archaeological site is tons of material culture, loads of finds that really point to things, and lots of shiny stuff. I mean, sometimes you do just find soil and cuts and features.
Yeah. And how important do you think this monastery and Eba herself was to the spread of Christianity through
in this
Britain?
area?
Yeah.
She was brought up in a family with 7 brothers, 3 of which were then kings. They set up between them monasteries all over Northumbria. These were real power centres. You know, she was a powerful woman with a large part of an economy around her.
It's fascinating how involved women were in powerful positions in the early Anglo-Saxon church, I think.
It's kind of moment in history where some women were able to really have that kind of equal power with men as well.
Yeah. And I think that's something that disappears later.
Yeah, certainly by the establishment of the Norman religious communities, women can no longer go into the shrine of St Cuthbert, which was around the Norman time.
Yeah.
So within a really short space of time, you've got women that are powerful enough to be able to set up monastic communities and to lead and to have this kind of really strong economic position in a society. And then within a couple of 100 years, they can't go into a shrine anymore.
Yeah. In Anglo-Saxon England, women pretty much had 2 choices: marriage or the church, something that could create a bit of an identity crisis.
One of the tiniest objects in the Norwich Castle Museum reveals this story.
This is a metal detector find that was made in 1998. It's, I think, one of the most remarkable things that we've had brought in through metal detecting in the last 20 years.
What is it?
It's a seal matrix. In other words, the thing that was used to make the impression that makes a seal.
Yeah.
And this was actually within a ring, a gold finger ring, and it would have spun on the gold rod that runs through the centre of it.
So I can just about spot that gold rod there, and it's got a name on it.
It says Baldehildis, or Baltild, which is a female name.
And do we have any idea who this woman is?
We've got one historical figure called Baltild, an Anglo-Saxon, sold into slavery and bought by the mayor of the court in 7th century France. And she then becomes queen, and ultimately she takes on the role of regent, and she rules the kingdom in her own right.
So this historical Baltilda, I mean, she's a really good candidate for the person that would have had an object like this. This is high status. It implies that somebody is literate.
Absolutely, it ticks all of the right boxes.
So why is it on a rod?
It's on a rod so that it actually rotates on that. So you have the public side with her name on it, but if you rotate it, you can see a couple in an intimate embrace beneath a cross.
OK, I wasn't expecting that. But no, it's actually quite rude. I mean, I can see genitals.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it could be an arm coming out very low down on the body, but I don't think it is.
I'm an anatomist, and I think I know what I'm looking at here.
It is a remarkable thing.
But combined with a cross, this seems to be a very peculiar image.
It might suggest something like a betrothal ring. And in this particular case, if she goes into a nunnery, maybe she's therefore a bride of Christ, and that's why she's beneath the cross.
It's quite curious because I think in a single object it almost encapsulates the choices that were there for high-status Anglo-Saxon women. You're either a wife and a mother or you're a nun, and it combines those double identities.
It does, and it also speaks of the power of these early women as well. I mean, Baltild is somebody that founds a monastery at Shell, and when she loses political power, sure enough, she's obliged to go into Shell as a nun herself in about 665. And there she remains until she dies in about 680. And then 11 years later, she's pronounced a saint.
Archaeology can reveal entirely new information about our ancestors, as well as giving us a tangible link to people whose stories have been largely forgotten. Getting closer to the physical reality of the monasteries these women founded will hopefully put them back in the picture. This programme has shown how every new excavation forces us to re-evaluate the story of Britain. From discovering how Stone Age people were more prolific monument builders than we ever realised.
That makes it an almost magical experience. The water will be rushing down on either side like a large prehistoric water feature.
To the treatment of slaves after death under Roman rule. And the astounding bravery of the men facing the worst horrors of the First World War. Through archaeology, we are able to reach back and touch their lives.